Close the meeting to order at 7:02 p.m. This is the work session meeting of the governing body of the Borough of Bloomingdale, Tuesday, March 6th, 2012. At this time, I ask everyone to please rise and salute our nation's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call.
Mayor Dunley.
Here.
Councilmember Schiff.
Present.
Conklin.
Here.
Otto.
Here.
Toots. Here. Short. Here. Yazdi.
Here. Also with us this evening, our clerk, Jane McCarthy, Administrator Ted Ehrenberg, and our attorney, Fred Semmer. This is an official meeting of the governing body of the Borough of Bloomingdale on January 4th, 2012. Public notification of the date, time, place of this official meeting was faxed and mailed to all local media and posted in the municipal building. As per state fire code, I'm required to acknowledge there are two emergency exits in the council chambers, the one which you entered through, one to my left. If an emergency was to arise, walk orderly through the exits, down the stairs and out of the building. Any questions, please raise your hand. Item 5, is there any action on item 5?
Yes.
Yes.
I'd like to, I don't know if it's actually, if I mean to remove it, but 12C, I would like to put it on closed session. Make a motion to take 12C, which is comparison of borough order contract, auditor contracts, and do it in a closed session.
Well then, if that's the pleasure of the governing body, then you can, then I would suggest no action taken on 12D until that's discussed.
Fine. Do I have to put that in a motion?
Well, we'll have to go in executive, and then come out and take action if the council chooses to do so.
Yeah, that would be under contract negotiations.
Correct.
Okay. So the motion is to move item C to executive session matter, and at the same time, not take action on item D until the executive session concludes. Councilwoman Schreiber makes that motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
What I'd like to do, just so the members of the public who are here with us this evening, we have a quick early executive session. So I'd like to enter the executive session before we do early public comment. When we come back out of the executive session, we'll go right to public comment. Okay? So I hate to do it, people, but I ask you, I need you to leave the room. We promise we won't be more, try not to be more than 15 minutes, and then we'll resume as soon as we can. So I need a motion to go in executive, one matter negotiation. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, we'll resume. 7:44.
Here he is.
At this time, I need a motion to open early public comment. Do I have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone wishing to speak to an agenda item, please come up, state your name and address for the record.
Hi, I'm Carla DeWitt, and I live at Campy Lake. And I'd like to talk about the agenda item as it relates to ASI, the appraisal company that did a reevaluation. I think what I want to say to you is that I found that the company was very unresponsive to my questions and my concerns. And I guess the best way to make that point is to give you an example of my experience. I got my house evaluation, and that card came from them, that letter came from them. And then because I live in Campy Lake, my land evaluation came through the association. And when it did, I got it a little later, and I was very surprised that the land association was as high as it was. The 1 acre lot that I have, which is 100 by 400 feet, was assessed previously at $82,600, and now it was assessed at $294,600, which is an increase of 356%. So I, of course, made an appointment to go down and speak with the individuals that were holding court at the Old Borough Hall. and asked them why my land was valued the way it was. Of course, they started out reviewing my house card that they gave me, which for the most part was very accurate and was fine. And then we moved on to the appraisal of my land, which was a simple sheet of paper that said $294,600 with no explanation as to why. So I said to them, well, my understanding is that property is to be valued at fair market value. And fair market value is what a willing buyer and a willing seller agree upon. And he said yes. And I said, well, where in Bloomingdale has a 1-acre lot sold for $294,000? Well, we didn't have an answer. Okay, if you don't know, is there someone, obviously there's someone in your company who knows, because that individual must have valued my property as such. Well, I don't know. Well, could you get back to me? Could you let me know? Could you call me, email me, write me, let me know where in Bloomingdale any 1-acre lot sold for $294,000? I'd be very interested. I'd like to drive by and take a look. Needless to say, I never had any further response from them. I did get a letter because I attended one of these hearings, and the letter said my property was no longer valued at $294,000. It was now valued at $305,000. So in a 2-week period of time, the property was escalated $11,000. So I called them up, and I said, my name's Carla Hewitt, I live at Canby Lake, and this is my situation. I'd like to speak to someone about why my property is valued the way it is. My 1-acre lot. We turned everything over to the tax assessor was the response. I said, yes, I understand that, but he didn't do the evaluation. And I think probably I can get a better answer from you. I don't think it's an unreasonable question. Well, I got a little bit of blowback, and then finally I got a woman named Fran on the phone who said to me, we'll get back to you. What is it you want to know? I said, I want to know why my property escalated $11,000 in 2 weeks. And even more than that, I want to know why it was valued at $294 to begin with. Well, of course, they never got back to me. So this is my experience. This is the response I have from this company. I haven't called back again. I have to question why they did what they did. They never answered my questions. They never made any attempt to contact me. I understand the records have been turned over to the tax assessor here, but still in all, the work was done by this company. Now, my understanding is, correct me if I'm wrong, but we as a borough are paying these people about $250,000 to assess our properties. And that's not a small amount of money. I would expect some response to the residents. I would have expected an answer. I don't think it was unreasonable what I asked for. I certainly was polite in asking for it. And this was the response I got. Now, aside from this, yeah, I know maybe you can look at this and think this is a small matter. But I'm about to tell you that this, and there are people in this audience here tonight who will tell you, this represents approximately a $6,000 increase in my taxes in 1 year. 1 year. I have a 1,900 square foot 3-bedroom range on 1-acre property with $21,000 in taxes attached to it. This is breathtaking to me. This is not, oh gee, my taxes went up. This is life-changing for all of us in terms of whether we stay or whether we can afford to go, even if we wanted to. So I take this very seriously. I would have expected ASI to do the same. I would have expected some courtesies from them. I asked them why my 1-acre lot is now valued higher than 1.5 and 2-acre lots on Canby Lake, higher than 2-acre lots. We basically all have 100 by 400 feet of frontage. There are some exceptions, but most of us have that. And my 1-acre lot, now, I'm going to tell you, I got some killer oak leaf hydrangeas in the backyard, but I don't think that's going to value my property higher than a 2-acre lot. All I wanted was a response. I wanted an answer to my question. I don't expect you people to answer those questions. I know that's not your responsibility. But you did hire this company. They are your vendor, and they're on our dime, the taxpayers' dime. So what I'm asking for is that you use that influence with your vendor to be sure that we as taxpayers can get some level of satisfaction, some level of answers. We know what our options are. We know we can go to Brian Townsend. We have already had the conversation from him. We know what our options are. We will avail ourselves of them, be clear. But I don't think it's a lot to ask of a governing body who spent $250,000 to interact with its residents to get a simple answer to a simple question. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, please.
I just want to say for the record, I'm aware of your situation. I know that Sandy and Barbara and Brian are trying to sort this out. When we went out to a cooperative bid with Montague, the low bidder got it. I understand your frustration. I also understand that this is a big influence and affects so many residents in town.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Let me just finish by saying that I now know why they only do revals about every 30 years, because hopefully people's memories start to fall short. If they ever ask me, would you ever like to be involved in another reval, I would honestly say I think I'll pass. Because the company does the assessment and we receive the fallout. The borough employees take this very, very seriously. I know of your situation, I know those dollars, I know that Sandy was in my office at least 3 times. We're trying to find a way to address residents' concerns and problems on a case-by-case basis, because each one of them is absolutely individually different. But these people need answers, and we're trying to respond to them. Obviously, I'm making a list. I'm going to make an appointment with the principals of the company and find out what do you do. I've handled more citizen complaints since this process started in my entire 6 years of being now year 7 as a borough administrator. And I understand the frustration of the folks. This is a scary thing to think that one day I'm living in a house, next thing you know, my taxes could double. And maybe I'm not going to live here. I get that completely.
No, and I appreciate that, Mr. Edberg. I truly do. And yes, my conversations with individuals here in town have been very satisfying. I know they're empathetic. They live in town too, and I get that part. Believe me, I do. It's just that, as I said, I do believe it's the responsibility of the borough governing body to hold a vendor accountable. Yeah, I did look at the contract you had. Talk about attention to detail. Do you know the contract you signed, John, doesn't say Borough of Bloomingdale, it says Montague on it. I mean,
because it was a cooperative bid.
yeah, I know it's a cooperative bid, but the mayor's signature's on it, and it doesn't even have our borough's name on it. So talk about attention to detail. I work in healthcare. Let me tell you, attention to detail is everything. And this, okay, it's not a life and death. Nobody's amputating the wrong leg, but it is it's impactful to our lives going forward in this town. This is not my taxes just went up. We expect our taxes to go up. We do not expect to be forced out of our homes to this degree. This is beyond the pale, folks. This is something that none of us wants to face, and all we're asking for is some consideration and some recognition of the fact that perhaps the vendor did not use the proper methodology. Perhaps they weren't careful enough to look at the comps. We up at Canby Lake and other parts of town, just like you guys, wherever you live, just like Morse likes John, just like everywhere, we've all suffered the slings and arrows of this economy, and we know our property values are less. My goodness, we know. We had a beautiful 8-frame down the end of our street that started out at $600, 2 doors down from me, started out at $600,000, sat on the market for 2 years, and eventually sold for $350,000. It's larger than my home, and now they're telling me my house is valued $200,000 more than that. I look at this and I say to myself, okay, where is the logic? But I can't pull that out of the air. I need to have someone give me some answers. So that's all we're asking for, and thank you for your patience.
Thanks, Carla.
Let me just finish by saying that my next process is to speak with our borough attorney, Mr. Townsend, see if I can find some remedies for you folks that so you get some adjustment, or certainly some consideration for the plight that you're in. Like I said, I'm not welcoming all these complaints, but as the borough minister, I think I need to receive them. So if you contact me, you can go to the borough email, which would be the easiest, because then I'd have your factual information. Go on, send me an email, and I will start to see if I can assist you on this level. As the mayor and the council were, we hired a firm to provide the service. We're not the providing, and once you basically make that deal, we go with the best attempts and thoughts that these folks do this professionally in multiple towns. So that this isn't, their first try out in doing assessments for communities. This is a professional firm. We expect them to conduct and handle these matters properly. That's the only thing I can offer you this time. I wish I could do more, but in reality, at this point, I'm not empowered to change the outcome of this.
Peter, floor is yours.
Peter Doran, 12 East Shore Road, Campbell Lake. I'm here to talk to you about the appraisal of my property, lot 26, block 4, and the appraisal of the Campbell Lake properties, all of which I think are out of proportion and deserve another look. I'm not going to present questions of real estate and appraisals to you, to the mayor and council. For that purpose, I went to the AIS people who were supposed to be with the public. And you know what? The person who interviewed me was not an appraiser. When I asked him real estate questions, he said, "Don't ask me. I'm only an inspector." I think you contracted for and you're paying appraisers. So I'll be very brief. The questions that I posed to him, I'm not going to pose to you. It would be unfair because you're not appraisers. But there are matters of comparables and things like that. I'll say only one thing. When I took the real estate course that the state of New Jersey gives to prospective real estate agents and brokers, they taught us one thing, among many others, that there is a rule of thumb, a proportion between the value of the land and the value of the home. And if that is out of balance, then it's not a real estate deal. And the rule of thumb was, which they told me, was the value, the cost of the land should not exceed 1/3 of the total cost of the home and the land. Well, I got news for you. My land is appraised much more than 100%, and more than 120% of the home, which is way out of proportion. But again, that's only as a point of information. I'm not posing questions to you. I understand you're not appraisers. I think this should be revisited by an appraiser. Thank you.
Mayor Dunleavy, council, first of all, thank you very much for putting this item on the agenda. We thank all of you, first of all, for having such high thresholds for paying, serving the community. I've lived here in Lake Iosco for 31 years. I've been a lifelong resident of Bloomingdale, and back in the 1960s, my father set up on the dais as one of the councilmen. So
if I may, name and address for the record.
For South Lake Iosco. I'm president of the Lake Iosco Company. We're a community of 43 residences on roughly 400 acres, most of which are within the borough of Bloomingdale. We do have some vacant land within the borough of Wanacue. And we're set up like Campy Lake, where the land is owned by the Lake Company. The shares of the Lake Company are owned by, most of them are owned by the people who live on the lake. That's kind of like a cooperative. We get one tax bill for a 37-acre lot that 43 residences are situated on. Each person then has a long-term ground lease, and we allocate those taxes among the people. When we got the bill, we saw that the that that piece of land, that the value had gone up 305%. Now, the average in Bloomingdale for all properties, given information from ASI, if you get off their website, show that the average increase for all property in town was 173%. So, Campy, you see what happened there, 350%. Your property, Carla, 305%. So, that, of course, raised our hackles. I mean, for the improvements on the properties, it generally comes from state assessors' manuals. You know, if you have a certain number of square feet, certain class of construction, certain number of fireplaces, it's all pretty much formulaic. So that's all a fairly equitable process, so long as you have the right facts down. But the land values were, subject to interpretation, and we believe ASI's process was seriously flawed. I'm a commercial real estate broker by profession. I deal with appraisals every day. I understand the process enough to be dangerous. But it was truly, after I spoke with people from ASI, my conclusion is that it was a very flawed process. I mean, $250,000 the town paid, roughly 2,500 lots, you paid roughly $100. I mean, we're hiring an appraiser to prepare for, trying to resolve this. We paid them several $1,000s. Our appraiser's an MAI, a member of the Appraisal Institute. Nobody from ASI has that designation. The people I talked to, Rob Bresci was the project manager. He was a very polite, professional young man, but you got what you paid for, I think, when you were the bottom line. Here's the biggest problem. You're valuing our land. Our land is now valued or assessed at $7 million. Well, if you look at all the comparables that ASI listed they used in the town, there wasn't one land sale cited. Not one. So how do you value land without any land comparables? Did they look outside the town for other lake communities? No. There were very few building comparable sales within the lake communities used. So there was a little bit of information that they had to use to provide values to hundreds of different houses in the lake communities. Even when you look at the different lake communities, Campy, Iosco, the two Morse Lakes, Glenwild, there's no uniformity among those valuations. And I did some analysis using some of the ASI information, and it appears that there's a systematic bias. You get a less, you tend to have a higher ratio the larger the lot on the lake. If you start out with those lake communities that have the smallest lots, quarter-acre lots per zone, Upper and Lower Morse Lake and Glenwild Lake. Glenwild Lake, the ratio is only 176%, which is only about 2% above that 173% for the town average. Next, Upper Morse Lake, Mayor Dunleavy, I think you're in Upper Morse Lake. For the 15 residences in that area, the ratio was 178%, which is only 3% higher than the 173% for the town average. Lower Morse Lake, again, quarter-acre lots, 26 residences. The actual ratio was 192% versus 173% for the overall town. Lake Iosco, you're going up from quarter-acre to half-acre zoning. That ratio is now 211% versus 173%. And the winner is Campy Lake with one acre zoning. You have 26 residences, and their ratio was 228% versus the town average of 173. So, I can argue that properties on the lake community are worth more than properties that are not. But don't you think, logically, that there should be some uniformity in the percentage increases even among the lake communities? Why do you have such an increase in Campy and Iosco versus other communities like Morse Lake or Glenwild where it wasn't affected? It's not your guys' fault. You hired ASI. You are left to pick up the pieces. the people on the lake who are being asked to pay dramatically higher taxes are being left to pick up the pieces. ASI has left, they're happy with their fee. We hope that we can work with the mayor and council over the next month. I don't know if it's possible or if we're required to file a tax appeal. We hope that we can resolve this amicably rather than being forced into the tax appeal process. What happens? We're already spending thousands of dollars on appraisers preparing for this. We know the tax appeal deadline is May 1st. Canfield Lake, I believe, has already hired attorneys. We have interviewed attorneys. When you hire the attorneys, they get 1/3 to 40% of any tax saving you have. So all of a sudden, there's an incredible financial burden being put upon this. I hope that we can resolve this before we have to file formal appeals for taxation. Mr. Ehrenberg, I appreciate your sentiment. I don't know if legally there's anything that we can do at this point. I'm sure that you look thoroughly into it. I mean, we have real problems on our lake. We have retired citizens who are now saying that we have to put our houses on the market. I asked ASI for the worksheets to show us how they came up with the values. Well, we can't give you that. You could go ask the assessor. So they just came up with these numbers out of thin air. I mean, they're really not telling us how they came up with it. There were no land comparables used for this. And I know for that one lot, 37 acres, our taxes, if you apply last year's tax rates, is going up $100,000 for one lot. And you know what? If you look on the property fact card, there's an error. That property is 37 acres. And you know what? On the card it says 65.25 acres. That's an error. That's the area of our lake. We pointed it out. So, if you adjusted it just for that, on a per acre basis, we would have an assessment increasing the same as the town average. So, I know you guys are ultimately responsible. I know you did not cause the problem, but I urge you to do everything you can before we have to file those tax appeals and incur all those costs, and you guys just get more and more flack from the residents of these communities, which is unjustified. Listen, thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob.
Mayor, Justin, thank you very much for your time. My name is Carl Incaya. I'm also on Canfield Lake, Carla. My home actually resides right on Glen Wild Avenue. So I'm the only home on Canfield Lake that's on Glen Wild Avenue. Over the last few years, every year we're doing our taxes, we see our taxes going up 4%, 5%, went up 9% one year. And when I just did my taxes, I think I was about 13 too. So over the last year or so, my wife and I were considering for the value that we're getting for our property. We love Canfield Lake. Bloomingdale's a nice, quiet town. Whenever we go downtown, it's friendly. But when I see my friend's home down the Jersey Shore, or even some other towns in the area, I'm not sure if we could continue paying these type of taxes for the value. So in October, I hired an independent appraiser. She is certified. I went around looking for somebody that's certified to give me a realistic appraisal. Appraisal came in at $425,000. Now, she did a few comparables, but it's very difficult with the way the town is and our property is located. And I was really surprised on how high that valuation was. So when ASI came in, they valued our property at $487,000. So that's $60,000 more than an independent appraiser, Gail Smith, who knows the community, who knows Butler and Bloomingdale. I sat down with Mr. Garcia, very friendly. I explained to him the situation, told him that I'm right on Glen Wild Avenue, which is a county road. No sewers, curb, gutters, sidewalks, any of those others. We don't have any public water. You just can't get up there, no natural gas, public service. And he thought I had a really good chance of reducing the property value. Well, I got the letter a couple of weeks later, and they felt that was fair and just. So, as Carla said, and the gentleman from Lake Iosco, I think ASI came in, looked at the lake property, and they noted it as vacant land. Now, if there was no three-bedroom ranch built in 1956 on that piece of property, I'd say it's probably worth, quite a bit of money. If somebody wants to buy it, they already have a whole old house on there, and if they want to really put up a mansion or something, they have to knock it down at additional expense. So I just think some of these property valuations compared with the rest of the town are just a little bit out of line.
What was your assessment before?
The land was 76,000, and that home I think was 131. And it went to 225 for the home and 262 for the. So when we bought the house 14 years ago, and I remember looking at the property at the end of July, it was in the early evening, and I saw the sunset on Camden Lake. And I know people, Morris Lake's beautiful, Glen Wild Lake is beautiful, but I stood by that gazebo and I saw that sunset. And I said, I gotta have that house. The handyman special, and my wife and I went through the entire house, practically gutted it, siding, everything is new inside. And we can understand the wood and the shingles and all that good stuff going up in value. But the dirt and the grass and a couple of nice trees and the patio, to go from 76 to 262 is just a little bit. But thank you very much. I appreciate your time. And, thanks, Harvey.
Anyone else on that issue? Carl? Yeah.
Judo, 42 Coke Drive. After listening to these ladies and gentlemen speak, I'm sitting back there just thinking that in total, if my math is right, there's approximately 70 homes that are involved, which could be about $5,000 per home that we have in question here to their value, which, could be in excess of $300,000 that if they're successful in appealing this, their burden is going to fall on the rest of us. I'm not wording that properly. I don't want to incense anyone, but I think everybody knows where I'm going with this. If they're going to get tax relief, it's going to be at the expense of the whole town. So at this point, I think maybe the council should ask ASI to come back with certified appraisers and do this thing the way we paid to have it done. Thank you.
Anyone else on the reval issue? The reason I want to defer to the attorney for a few statements.
Thank you, Mayor. I've worked with respect to revaluations. I have been involved in 18 of them, a number of them with ASI. And I think the presentations by the residents tonight, you made a number of things clear, and it was very effective from the standpoint you recognize the governing body is not the individuals who can address this, so to speak. But you are right when you talk about the process. And what I'm hearing is I think it's important at this point in time, notwithstanding how the numbers may make you feel uncomfortable, that before we criticize the integrity of the entire process, what I'm hearing is that we just need some answers first. I'm not hearing that you got the answers you needed or even an understanding as to how these values were arrived at. Then a determination would be made by the assessor as to whether this is correct or incorrect. Brian Townsend is a very good tax assessor, and the buck stops with Brian. He's not going to put these numbers on the books unless he feels that he can justify them, because he is the one that's going to have to defend it. So I would say to the mayor and council, my suggestion would be, there seems to be clearly a trend this evening that it's the lake communities. I can tell you this year that in my conversations with assessors and experience, lake communities hold their values better than other communities. Now, that's not to say to the extent that you brought forward this evening I can't justify that for or against it. But I think what needs to be done is, and it's my understanding Mr. Townsend's going to meet with some individuals next Monday night with respect to the lakefront communities. And so hopefully, if I could just work with the administration, no one can necessarily change the numbers except the assessor or the county board of taxation. So, but we certainly, the governing body has the right to understand exactly what happened, and we do have the right to make sure the contract was complied with. But I want to just say, in fairness, there's certainly a number of residents who have concerns, and they were articulated very well. But I don't think it's a good message to say that that means the rest of this process. It should be questioned just yet, because there may be an issue with the lakefront communities and how the land values were arrived at, and that may or may not be something that will be addressed. But to say that the rest of the process, to infer anything from that, I would say not to, because your assessor checks every record card and every value before he finalizes this. And you're right, you do have the right to appeal, and we do, and so do you, have the right to try to come to an understanding of how these values were arrived at. So I would just say, Mayor, my one concern that I'd like the direction to look at with the administrator is to make sure we can report back to this governing body how these numbers were arrived at for the lakefront communities. But from all my conversations with the assessor and even my experience with this revaluation firm, I don't think it would be fair to say that the integrity of the entire process is at stake. I think there's certainly a question about these type of properties and these lakefront communities. And that I'd like to take a look at with the administrator. And I know Brian Townsend also is going to be meeting with some residents. There is time to take a look at this, and there is time for the residents, if necessary, to file an appeal.
John, can I ask a question, please?
Yeah, no problem. You say your name and address for the record.
Okay. Carla Hewitt, Camp Lake. My understanding is, and somebody told me this, I'm not sure who, but I'm sure you can clarify this. Let's assume I appeal my taxes, and I win an appeal of, I don't know, $4,000. Now that $4,000, because I have to pay my taxes going forward until I win that appeal, correct?
Yes.
Yes. So now, 6 months, 9 months, a year later, I win an appeal and the borough owes me $4,000. I overpaid $4,000. Okay? Borough has to pay me back, correct?
Yes.
Okay, now my taxes are made up of the borough portion, the school portion, which of course is the borough portion, right? And the county portion, correct?
Yes.
Borough makes up the borough portion, the borough makes up the school portion. Who makes up the county portion?
What I understand, the borough puts those dollars out and then gets the money back later on from the county. But the school portion, the borough doesn't get back. So it's clearly, there's never, the goal in this whole process is fairness. You know, whether it's a lot higher or lower, no matter what, what we always say when we handle these appeals or in this process, it's to make sure it's fair. It's not to win for the borough.
No, I understand, but I guess what I'm trying to get at is that, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Because even if I win the appeal, I'm going to pick it up on the other side as a taxpayer, to some extent.
But compared to what you would take.
Yes, I understand that, but I'm not
The
the only
borough.
taxpayer in the room.
It would hurt the borough.
You guys are
because
too.
The borough strikes a budget,
Yeah.
which includes, revenue for the Board of Education that the borough would have to lay out and not get back if there was a refund.
Okay.
Okay, so to answer your question, but right now I'm not thinking in terms of appeal. I'm just thinking in terms of getting the information in fairness and leaving it to the assessor to ultimately make those recommendations and do.
I love an optimist. Thank you.
Carla, to your point though, yeah, Peter, one moment. To your point, budgetarily, we have to plan for both uncollected taxes
I
as
understand.
well as,
Yeah,
the
I get
appeal
it.
process, so.
I know.
it's not
I know.
easy. Yeah, Peter, if you want to say your name and address for the record, please.
I have an easy question for Mr. Sandra.
Good evening, Mr. Durant.
Assuming there'll be some dialogue and assuming there'll be more proofs and discussions and whatever, my question is, does AIS have the authority to amend numbers should they want to do that?
No, the only person who can amend the numbers is the tax assessor himself. He can take a recommendation from the reval company, and he can either accept it or decline. But it ultimately rests with the tax assessor.
Yeah, Bob.
I just have a question for Mr. Semra. Does the assessor have...
Bob, just your state name and address.
Oh, Bob Sheriff, 4 South Lake Iosco Road. Does the assessor have the authority to change the assessed values prior to the tax appeal filing date?
Yeah. Now, without putting any pressure on Mr. Townsend, but he does in one way. The books for the tax assessments are closed with the county tax board. But with that being said, if Mr. Townsend was of the opinion that the values would need to be addressed, he could initiate a petition to the county tax board with an explanation for an adjustment. If he felt that it was warranted, he could still, before May 1st, he could file and do that.
And I've dealt with Mr. Townsend over the years, and I've always found him to be very professional, very responsive, professional service.
Thank you.
Linda Huntley, 86 Fairhaven Avenue. Mrs. Emerald, I disagree that it's just the Lake Community Center or Arizona. I went and I saw the ASI, and they had put I have a hot tub, and they were assessing on my hot tub, which they can't. They did take that off. They also assessed me on a patio, which according to the assessor's book, it has to be slate or something different. And they did take that off. And there's some other items I think that are incorrect in mine. So that's mine, and I don't live on the lakes. So it's not just the lake that has errors.
I'm not saying anybody has an error, even the lake communities at this point in time, but you are saying that the process to some extent worked, because if you went and you told them about certain items that they missed or should have picked up in the field, and then they made the adjustments, that's the way the process is, that's the reason for those reviews with the residents. So I think it's actually good if they made those adjustments after you met with them.
The point is, they didn't send me a card showing what was on my property, assessing my property. If I didn't go there and look at the sheet, I would not have known that what they were assessing me on was incorrect. And I know there's a number of people who have not gone there and looked at the sheets. So I don't believe that just because people aren't complaining, that means that their amounts are right.
Again, on the issue, to that point, the public has the right for a process. So if the resident chooses not to do something, that would be their responsibility. Right, no, it is good. But to Bob Sherrick's point specifically, well, first of all, to Fred's point, you cannot, again, say the whole process was flawed, because your standard home in Bloomingdale, your standard lot, your standard home had easier comparables, and I think on average, if the average residence saw 173%, I think maybe standard for where we were assessed at. The fact that the lakes are 350%, although they hold more value, whereas Morse Lakes is only a couple percent more than the average, makes a little more sense. So it is something that, we promise everyone here we will look into. To Mr. Sherrick's point, if we could save these associations who seem to have the biggest problem, legal fees, all this piece of a formal county process, this is something
Yes,
that's
I
possible.
think that's something we can look at. And like you said, Mayor, the message shouldn't be that the whole process, because then some resident's going to say, well, then I'm just appeal too.
Well,
and we're all going to have a problem.
That's why I'm on
But
the
with
record.
respect to this,
Right.
yes, you're right. There would be a way, if there was justification for an adjustment, that I think would be a legal measure to address this concern. Of course, we would need Brian Townsend's consent to that. But yes, to answer your question, yes.
And I just wanted to Mr. Caputo's point, where then if that occurs, it's on the backs of the rest of the taxpayers. Well, the tax rate hasn't been struck yet. Until the budget is done, we don't know the tax rate. So if a house is assessed fairly, that's what it is. And if one comes down in the association to where it potentially should be from a comparable market value, it doesn't put the burden on anyone. Once the tax rate struck, it's determined based on the levy we need based on these new assessments. So it doesn't put the burden on the rest of the community. what I'd like to do, how many in the room are either Campy, Glen Wild, or with these issues? How many in the room have already spoke to Brian Townsend, started some sort of process with Brian? You're not in the Lake Community. No, I'm kidding. I'm sorry.
I'm meeting Thursday night.
You're meeting Thursday. Has anyone scheduled such a meeting? Okay, so that's started. How many have met with the assessment company? Not everyone, but
When do you meet?
good enough. Excuse me?
When do you meet?
Have, not when they're at the home, the interview process.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to get an idea.
Hardly meeting with the assessors. He's meeting with some guy who knows
Well,
nothing
that was
about
stated on the record, right. But how many actually made the meeting, the interview process? Okay, just to give me an understanding. What I'd like to do is create a list of everyone, and there's probably more that couldn't make it tonight, is to seriously email Jane or Ted, just your name and address, and your contact phone numbers, I'm sorry. I want to just create a list of concerns. That's all we're doing.
Yeah, and keep in mind,
There's a
for anyone
process,
who
I
feels
understand.
like they're off the list, doesn't mean, if
No.
there was an adjustment, it would be below the property line, and it wasn't.
John, what do you want a list of? Trust me, we've got this knocked already. I can send you an email tomorrow with everybody in the
That's the similar
association
issue.
and all their increases and those
I can
people.
get that, I can get that information. I just want to know name and address, and contact information. Just so I can,
Okay, well, then
create.
just,
We'll send our late secretary will send it.
Okay, Ron, before you come, just, again, just to start the list there. I know your question's going to be, but come on.
You seem to have refuted what I said previously, trying to negate the fact that ASI has put on their website that after their valuation, the current tax rate will be approximately .0371. Now, if all of these appeals are successful, that rate is not going to be .371. It's going to be considerably higher. So don't say it's not going to affect the whole community.
No, I didn't say that. I said it's
I
not.
think you did.
What I stated was, if there was a documented, identifiable error in the process of how some of these lake associations were revalved, and their values have to come down, so I don't know if that's the answer. The burden isn't now put on, the burden is just shared equally amongst the entire town. If your assessed value is where it should be, and theirs isn't, and theirs is reduced, yes, will that affect your rate ultimately? Yes, it
I'm
will. It's
questioning
not
if
putting
my
a burden
evaluation
on
is where it's supposed to be. He's saying the whole system isn't flawed. Peter Duran testified, or
Well, this is
mentioned that the fellow come to his house wasn't even a certified appraiser. How do we know that there weren't certified appraisers all over town? That in effect that these appraisals are valid? We don't know that.
This is exactly the information we need to find out is, are these valid, correct, and no one's insinuating they are or they are not. My point, to your point, was it's not putting the burden. If it's proven that your reval is exactly where it should be, and there was error made on someone else, that someone else should come down. It doesn't put the burden on everyone else, it's equitable at that point. The point in
I
that,
say it's not going to change it.
I never said that. I said it's not putting the burden on somebody else. It's sharing the
Well, I
equity.
consider it a burden. If the tax rate that was proposed to me on their website goes from .371 to .4, I consider that an extra burden, excessive burden.
But it's not a result of the lakes fixing a problem that may or may not exist. If a problem exists and it's repaired in the lake, yes, it could increase the tax
But we
rate.
don't know if there was a problem in other areas of town
True,
also.
this is all what we're talking about. Research. Just happens that it's the lake associations here tonight. That's why I want to create a list of those who are here.
Oh.
There's a process. Everyone has the right at the time to go to ASI. Everyone then has the right to go to Brian Townsend. And then everyone has the right to go to county tax appeal. So there is a process that no one's denied from.
The people that aren't here tonight,
Have the right to go through the process.
they have to be made aware of this.
They are aware of the process.
Oh,
We're not doing anything special for anyone in this room.
I
I just want to identify who's in this room that has the issue.
Okay, thank you.
Everyone has a process to go through. If you choose to do it, you do. If not, that's at your own call. The tax rate you refer to on ASI's website is an arbitrary number based on last year's levy. It doesn't take into consideration this year's revenue, this year's, you know,
Why did they put it there?
just to give an idea, based on last year's levy, if the assessments were to stay, last year's levy remained identical, that's what the tax rate would have been. But it's not a valid number until the budget is struck and we know our revenue sources, expenses, etc. Ted?
My only interest at this point is to help facilitate those people that don't feel that they're being addressed. So by confirming this list, I will speak to Mr. Cimbro, I will speak to Brian Townsend, but I don't, it's kind of like when you reach the borough of Bloomingdale, this is a 911 emergency, call the police. If you feel that you're not being served, then you need to appeal your taxes or go to Mr. Townsend directly. But I think collectively, my concern is you folks basically are going to get backed into a corner, which I don't want. That was never the intent of this council. We just wanted, because we were directed to do the revale process. As I said before, I'd be not quick to jump into another one if I can help, if that ever comes before me. What we're trying to do is find a way to facilitate this so you don't incur any more costs, remedy the situation, and obviously the borough doesn't incur any additional costs, because how do I anticipate all the tax bills that could find their way into this council? This is not addressed, it'd be almost impossible to figure out a budget. So we're in the same plight you are. We just need to, I have to say, facts before acts. We need to get all the factual information in front of it and then work towards that process. I know there's a timeline, but we will work hard to get this addressed and adjusted as quickly as possible.
And again, the issue is, you know, everyone here articulated their concerns quite well. Whether they're, you know, I don't want to consult it, whether they're valid or not is what we need to determine. So if they're found to be a glitch because it's overassessed, it's not using comparables on vacant land or homes, then we don't know yet, there could be an adjustment. The answer could be that it was done correctly and this is what it is, and then obviously the next step is the county appeal process, which we, if we can, if it's proven otherwise, can save any homeowner that additional cost would be our goal. And that's where we are right now. Okay. Anyone else on this issue? And again, yes, sir. I'm sorry. I know you've been waiting. I know it's not that issue. So, yes, sir. Please state your name and address for the record.
Let them go first.
My name is Michael O'Brien. I reside at 6 West Shore Road, Champion Lake, Boozer. We received notices from ASI advising that our fair market values of our dwelling increased 275% in the last few years. Also, the fact that the land appreciated from $86,000 to $295,000. Now, our home is at the base of the mountain. From my backyard, I'd say our home is maybe on a third. We are in a 2-acre zone, 2-acre area. 1/3 of 1 acre, 2/3 of 1 acre is where my home is. The rest is a slope, 30-degree slope up the mountain. How that mountain could have increased in value 340% without gold, without silver. I don't understand where they take these figures from. Now, it sounds funny, but it's unfortunate that a professional organization could just take that figure and apply it to a homeowner. And when we talk about professionalism, the letter that we received mentioned that we could have an interview within 5 days of receipt of letter. The request was denied. We were not allowed an interview. We were not allowed to discuss. The letter clearly states that if you receive this letter within, and you complain within, or request an interview within 5 days of receipt of this letter, they would give it to you. They would not. What did they tell you, Patricia?
We were too late. We were on vacation. We didn't
Okay.
get the letter.
Okay, the reason was,
Yeah.
I've had this issue with retail companies in the past, and I would like to reach out to them because under those circumstances, they should grant you, and I would argue contractually, they should grant you the right to an interview. And I've gone through this before with rebound companies, and Mayor, I would just as soon follow up, and I would reach out to them and remind them of their obligation if I could have this gentleman's information.
Yeah, Mr. Brown, before you go, I want to get your information, because you're obligated to get at least that. If that happened to me, and I didn't, when I called, I didn't say I was the mayor. I had to feel something.
You were mayor, I don't think it would have made it.
Well, I didn't say. But I had to feel something in more slates, and after the fact too, but they gave me a telephone. They actually faxed me the specs of where they came up on these values, and then gave me a time, exact time and day, the next day. They called me, and we went over it. I mean, back to the lakes, they actually assessed our 15-acre lake as a buildable lot, the land under the water. It was reduced.
Sir, can you just come over and
Yeah, first. See, these are the kind, if you, as a resident, if you call and they deny you, we should be hearing about that. I mean, I would hope, if you know anyone else who has that situation, that you would call Mr. Ehrenberg immediately. Yeah, you go to the borough website, you get Ted's email, just to create this list. Thank you, sir. Anyone else on rebound? Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak to an agenda item? Please come up, state your name and address. Yes. State your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Paulo Letu. I live at 81 South 12, Bloomingdale. Oh my God, I thought I was paying high taxes. Wow. I know the pain. But I'm here for case number 2 on the agenda. Number 12, pending business. Letter C. The comparison of the borough auditor contract.
No, it's been put into executive session. It's still an agenda item.
It's been talked after the phone, but it's here, that's why, that's the one. If I'm on. We could see the situation of the residents of Bloomingdale. Now, my question is that the person that they wanted to put as an auditor is the same person that worked with former councilwoman in that audit?
Last year's auditor, yes, was the same one that.
That's the same person that 4 members of the board decided to appoint her for this year?
Well, that's on the agenda.
Well, that's in the agenda because, well, they made a motion, and it was 4-2.
The motion was tabled because there was no proposal in hand, so now there is, so we'll see if action is taken tonight.
So for the record, I would like to say that I know that there's a bid for $26,000, and the person that was doing the job last year was making $35,000. This is different almost of $9,000. $9,000 that we don't have, and we could use that money to serve the community better. We could buy fuel for every single apparatus in our town for probably 2 months. We could use that money to pay insurance to whatever emergency that we have. Also for the record, the gentleman that did the auditor for last year said in record that at the end of the contract of the budget, we would have saved $400,000. Well, it was only $4,500, a difference of $395,500. Okay? My question is, that's almost 95, 96% off. Councilwoman Shorman, no one for 3 times said He's not here to defend himself. Up to the point that he told you, Mayor, that she don't know if you're twisting the truth or not. It's a record. So, as a concerned citizen of the town of Bloomingdale, that I've been living here 17 years, and there's people that have been living here all their life. Every decision here in this board is going to affect each and every one of us. Okay? $395,500 is a long, it's a big number. Councilwoman Shulman said he's not here to defend himself. Why don't he come here in front of the town people and explain to us why he was so off? We're not talking about $5. We're talking about $395,000. It's a lot of money. And I believe we're not in a situation, we're in very difficult times. People leaving our town, our beautiful town, because they can afford to live. If we could say $10 that we didn't have yesterday, we have it today. And I hope the decision we made wisely and how we're going to spend the taxpayer money. Everybody did. Because we all pay, and you guys pay too because you live in town. So, I don't know, it's just very difficult. We cut a bet thinking about that we could say $9,000, $8,000, whatever might be the case. Anything under the $26,000, anything over the $26,000, which is one of the bid, and the person is a responsible person that could do the job. Anything about that, if you have, gonna go, like last meeting, you're gonna go buy a car, $26,000, $35,000, the same as that car. Which one will you buy? Thank you.
Anyone else? Wish?
Penny Conley, Lake Iosco. I'm not as eloquent as this individual. I speak from the heart, as you know. The budget is running $500,000, if I'm correct, somewhere in that vicinity. We're over budget. I mean, to start the new 2012. So therefore, the rateable that's charged on the old 2011 at 3.71 will no longer be, because you're starting at a deficit. If you have all these people with the concerns, with their assessments, you're going to be in the arrears, maybe 1.5 million plus a half a million. So 3.71 rateable is way out of whack. I spoke at the last meeting, and I put it on the agenda. These people have every right to complain about ASI. My experience was they were very, very unprepared for the questions. They didn't even know what land use was. They had no idea. There was a couple, I think it was the Greenbergs from camp in front of me. They were taking their assessment versus the sale at the end of the block, which was land and house, and they were taking the apples to the orange, because the figure that the Greenbergs had was not including their land. So I said, these people left with no correct answer because they didn't know where they stood. The land value was not included with the camp, they just left Iosco, and they had no idea. They didn't know what land lease was. I sat there for half an hour while they made phone calls, and then they said, we'll get back to you. They got back to me and they said your assessment is proper. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak on an agenda item? Seeing no one, have a motion to close? So moved. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. 5-minute recess, by the way. Shall resume at 8:58. Reports from the governing body. Does anyone have anything this evening for us?
I have some issues for close, but
Well, governing body first, so
I'm
let's...
sorry.
I'd just like to report as a member of the Budget Committee that we had one meeting. We met with the police department and we met with the fire, and they both gave us exemplary professional reports for their requests. And we don't have any budget meetings scheduled because I think it's important that we do schedule them, and I'd like to make a motion that as we did last year, we open our meetings, our budget meetings, be advertised and open them to the public. The public does not speak or have input, they just have the ability to attend.
I'll second that. You made a motion, right?
That was my motion.
Discussion on the motion?
Yeah, I'd like to actually make it more free for our professionals to come in. There's some of the questions that we do ask them is around, do you have any ideas around bringing in revenue? And I want them to be able to speak freely to it, rather than having a reporter sitting there and taking notations of every thought they may have that could bring us revenue, as we all know we're going to need it this year. So rather than going through the motion and approving something that's going to force now our employees to watch what they're saying, how they're saying it, and then having the public here without giving them the ability to speak or ask questions, what's the sense? Allow us to go through the process, learn the system, learn what they know, take their input, and then if we want to go ahead, and this is something that I do want to do, before we pass the budget, we sit, we open up the public meeting, we explain the budget, where your money's going, allow you to ask questions, and then allow the three of us to answer those questions. I think that could be a much better process than advertising these meetings where we're supposed to sit with these individuals and ask them for their input in how they're going to bring in more revenue or spend less, without the pressure of the public or a reporter printing out every idea they may have, whether it's good or bad. So I'd like to give them that freedom.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Councilman Yazdi, because there is already a public process. When the budget is introduced, there are public hearings on the budget. So it's not like you're excluding the public, because there's already a process by statute that exists already. So to again, need to advertise each and every meeting, I think it's cumbersome. I think if you guys decide on a Thursday that also you want to meet on a Saturday, you have the obligation of advertising. If you're going to motion that all meetings are public, then you have a quandary of always having to advertise and not being able to meet without doing such.
I don't think we had a problem with this at all last year.
Again, I don't know how it worked last year. I don't, to Ray's point, it's sort of a negotiation with your department heads. And I don't think that negotiation in the creation of the budget should be public. When the budget is formulated, there is a public process that exists already. So, anyone else have comment on that?
Yeah, I'm a little torn on this, but, we made to make this whole process transparent, okay? That's why that camera's up there. This is transparency. I mean, you're trying to back out of something, but yet we put something forward for transparency. Do I like being on that camera? No. But is it transparent? Yes.
But the negotiating of the budget, it becomes transparent when the budget becomes public.
Well, this is a public meeting. And that's why the camera being here and not being here,
Well, the budget is
it's
public.
the budget
It has to
will
include every person in this room.
And I already made that promise to the people. It will be transparent. We will have a meeting or two, as many as you need, to understand the budget, where your money's going, because that's one of the things that I want to bring to the table by coming up here, by getting elected, to allow you the opportunity to ask questions before we come up here and vote on it, okay? But allow me the opportunity to have that conversation in private rather than with a reporter sitting there taking notes. I want them to speak freely. I want to be able to speak freely. I want to be able to speak freely with my counterparts
I don't
that
think
are
we
on
have
the
a
budget.
problem, we don't have a problem speaking freely. It never entered it. I know we're asking them for input, but I think when we sat at the budget meeting and asked for input, I don't think the process was, well, that's a good idea. I'll think about it and get back to you. I don't think anybody came to us at that point with anything that would be objectionable publicly. In fact, we even commented that when we sat with our police chief, what great public relations it would be to actually observe the professionalism, the reports that were so well done, and the reasoning behind getting to the end of the budget process. And I certainly felt it would have been a real plus for this town, or anybody who had been, to hear either the police chief or the fire department. They would gain more respect for what they do, what they ask for, and our process of doing it. I think.
Linda, let me just remind you, at the same meeting, I asked the police chief to give us ideas of how to bring in more revenue, and he did. And right there and then, I turned to both of you and asked, would you support? And I don't want to talk about it now because I think it would be more professional for us to discuss this in closed session, bring the rest of the council up to speed on what that suggestion is. Let's get consensus and then come back and vote on it. And that's a revenue generating idea that he may not have given us at the time, and I may not have spoken freely about it with the public there. So these are the reasons why I'm saying it. It's not because I don't want to have transparency. I want to have transparency. I don't believe in having meetings and not allowing the public to speak and ask questions, and I don't want to put our professionals in direct line of questioning by the public.
I totally disagree with you. I think that anybody who is going to speak to us can call you privately if there's something they feel they don't want public, and can talk to you privately. Doesn't have to be brought up at this meeting. I think the people we spoke to were going to be thoughtful about their recommendations and come back to us. I don't see that it would ever be a problem.
I don't understand what you're saying. You'd rather have them come back to us with an answer that they could give us immediately right there?
I think that's what we said to them.
That's a broken promise.
Think about this. If you could think of anything to help us with the revenue, I don't think it, it wasn't right there. I think it was something to think about and come back to us with.
I prefer to have that conversation right there, take it down to the umpteenth degree, understand exactly what they're talking about.
But I don't think, they needed the time to think about it also, is what I'm saying. It wasn't that they were afraid to speak.
We have an opportunity to bring in some serious revenue into the town based on that conversation. I don't know if that conversation would have taken place if the reporter was in the room. I, for one, would not have been comfortable having that conversation.
I just don't agree.
So,
Let me ask you a question. Are you
Can I say one thing? That should have gone, if that's something that was not wanting to be brought out in public, that should have been brought back to his committee. He has a committee that he could have spoken to about that extra revenue. I think, I agree with Shortman, that we should have it open. And something like that is supposed to be confidential. You can go back to his committee people and discuss it.
Let me ask, excuse me, Councilman, just real quick, are you referring to just the budget committee?
Yes.
Well, if it's not a quorum, which it would not be a quorum, Budget committee is you, Joanne, and Red.
Right.
There's no need to publicly advertise a meeting if there's no quorum. So if the three of you were to sit here and have a meeting, it's not a quorum, no need to publicly advertise, and public was to walk in the door, you'd have the opportunity at the time to let someone sit or ask someone to leave.
That's what they can do.
I mean,
Yeah,
am I
I
off
mean,
bound?
just to take that a step further, what you could do is, you could post the notice of your meeting. You could post it to the public. If the public were to attend, it's not an official public meeting. In other words, you can publish it. But at any point in time, your subcommittee could say, you know what, because we're going to be speaking about something that pertains to personnel, you certainly wouldn't want to ask a department head about various personnel issues and things like that in front of anyone in the public. That's confidential unless you come back and...
But that should go back to their committee. Anything personnel should go back to their committee,
Yeah, I'm just saying,
not to the budget
from a
committee.
standpoint of structure, what I'm hearing is you can have sort of, you can address both of the suggestions. Because you could say, you could post a notice that you're going to have a get-together of the committee. And then at a certain point, the committee could say, you know, I think we should go upstairs to the conference room and speak about some further issues. And that would not permit the public's participation. And if you do that, always keep in mind, you may be formulating the budget, but you are not ratifying it or approving it. It does ultimately come back to the public process where there's a hearing. You can even have it on the agenda for a presentation and then have that public participation. So all I'm trying to suggest are ways to address what both council persons have suggested.
And I think one other way to try to meet halfway on this is, if you want to start that process, again, it's not a public meeting, but you don't have a quorum, why not allow public at that point after you've met with all the department heads? Go through the department heads, get your initial worksheet together. In other words, your initial template of the budget. Departments are gone now. And you guys want to sit and now go through those lines, add, cut, where do we make it up, how do we do it? Let public sit through those, but to your point, have private meetings while you're meeting with department heads. Once that's done, you have department head requests on one worksheet, then start that process.
I would prefer that the public come and sit when they want, and if we have a personnel issue, we should then
Go
ask
back to
them
that
to leave.
committee. Go
That I
back to
would
their
agree with.
committee.
Well, you're the
I'm
ones-
not talking about personnel issues. We keep going to personnel issues and going to a committee. We are the committee that decides
But
personnel issues.
to Ray's point, and again,
Of the budget committee, each department has a committee on their own. The police department has a committee, recreation has a committee. If there's personnel issues, it should go to that committee, but not to the budget.
Right, and I am not talking about personnel issues. I'm talking about revenue-generating ideas which the employees may not feel comfortable discussing if
In
there was
public,
public, or if there was a reporter printing out every idea that comes to you.
and if it's anything to do budgetarily, it's the budget committee. It's not, if it was a budget item related to DPW, it wouldn't be the GovOps committee or Finance Administration Committee. It would be the budget committee. So you keep saying committee. If it's a budget item, it's the budget committee. To use an example, Linda and John, Glenn, just to raise concern, and Ariana and Debbie, don't print this because I'm making this up. Let's say you have a department head in here and says, you know what, I want to, merge with Chicago on my department, or I want to lay off 4 people. Do you think that department head, to Ray's point, is going to want to say that with public? Because the first thing it will be is on the patch and in the trends, Borough merging with Chicago. That'll just squash any idea of a potential negotiation. That's the point.
I understand what you're saying, John. Number one, you don't have a quorum. But if they post it on the bulletin board in a public conference, can they tell them, listen, there's a few things you have to go over?
You can.
That's understandable. I agree with what you're saying.
If that's the case, then there's no need for a motion.
Right.
Because you're not going to publicly advertise a non-quorum meeting.
Right. I understand.
Okay, so to understand the legality of this, a committee member would not have the right to escort a resident out if they show up.
No, if the committee itself, the majority of the committee decided now we're going to close the meeting to the public, then yes, then the committee would ask the public to leave. So that would be within the right of the committee's majority to make that decision.
Right, and if it's not a public meeting, which it would not be because there's no quorum, there's no public comment allowed.
Right.
If you declare it a public meeting and it constitutes a quorum, then the public has to have the opportunity to speak.
I get it.
It always comes back to politics with you. You started out by requesting permission for Linda Huntley to serve on the Budget Committee. It was taken off the table last meeting, and you're now bringing it back around to a certain member of the committee not be allowed to start any
That one bit.
person.
I don't believe that one bit, right? Not one bit.
Well,
That
let's
is
just
not
see
the
what
reason.
happens at our next meeting.
Any member of the public can
What are you afraid of?
sit
Hey,
and listen.
Please.
Glenn, do you want to say what happened with our committee the first year we were on it? Who was on our committee? Remember? You, me, and who was the other person?
Person that we beat.
Huh?
Person that we beat. It doesn't matter.
Mark Crum. And he sat on that budget. He sat on, not here, heard it.
Well, I think the
sat.
point is that we can, people
You're
can come
picking on,
and...
you're picking on Linda, who's not even
I
on it.
personally-
You don't want her there
Let me clarify.
listening. But, let me finish.
I withdraw my
She's not on
motion.
the budget committee, like we had Mark Crum.
Motion's been withdrawn.
Okay, and I'd just like to clarify my point I was making. I personally have no problem with Linda Huntley being on the Budget Committee. The problem is the town, and this was posted by a poll, and last time I checked it, it was some 700 to 200 voting against Linda being on it. It's what the public wants, not what I read.
Okay,
Okay,
Linda
so I just
Shortman
wanna
got more
clarify.
votes than John Dunleavy, but I'm not sitting in his chair either. And that.
Because you didn't run for mayor.
We're right.
It's pretty basic why you're not sitting in the chair. Run for mayor, you get more votes, you sit in the chair. Okay, any other governing body reports? Professional reports, Jane, you have anything for us? And Fred, anything for us?
Mayor, we're still monitoring the state plan. There's going to be some mapping that'll come forward. Also,
That is the first item on pending,
Mayor?
which I want to give Mrs. Nestel the opportunity to come up because she was a little question. So, I'm sorry, related to the attorney report?
No, I want to go back to the report from the mayor and council.
All right, can we let Fred finish and then I'll come back to you, please? This is in the middle of.
And then also Bass did formally withdraw their bid, so that's one hurdle out of the way from a legal perspective. So we'll have a discussion in the executive session just about a proposal that was made, but from the standpoint of the bid and withdrawing the bid, they did formally withdraw their bid by communication of their attorney to our office. There's some recent developments in the Highlands Act with respect to exemptions that were just released that I'll brief the governing body on in the next meeting. And I really want to thank the clerk's office. They've been a great assistance in getting me acclimated and up and running. And I appreciate that an awful lot. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Patouche, you wanted to?
Yes, the Board of Health met last night, and I wanted to note that there's 2 positions that are open. We need 2 alternates on that, and I just want to make that statement so we can fill those positions. 2 alternates, we need 2 alternates.
Okay.
3 of them out.
Mr. Administrator.
I have some matters for closed session to inform the council, but I have a concern, and I thought it would be positive just to have this conversation in front of the whole council. With the loss of Donna Molyneux, where the finance department is down to 1 person, and we have a reduced staff, but I have more requests for information coming from the finance department, and most of the time, I'm not even copied on it. So when I go in to see Sherry to find out, I need you to do this or that, she said she's busy with pulling information for other issues.
Let's see. Council request, so.
Yes.
So what you're saying is try to limit the busy work?
Well, what I'd like to be copied on, so I know what the requests are, And second, we only have one person in there in the finance department.
All right, so actually, one's from Joanne, one's from Linda, just requesting, I guess, audit documents.
Yeah, so when you say five, I'm sorry, I didn't know that you had to, we should copy you on that? Is that what?
Well, I'd certainly like to be looped in, maybe I can help facilitate some of this. She's in it alone now.
Joanne, you requested audit trails. What is an audit trail?
Audit trail, just copies, I asked for audit trails for 2008, 2009, 2010.
These big,
And if you want, we could discuss
Okay.
it later.
please. Audit trail.
In regards to developing this year's budget, what's?
Yeah, I just wanted to know.
Okay.
Okay, again, if it's this year's budget, the mayor asked you since October, who wants to get on this budget committee? No one volunteered until I got in this chair, and I gladly took the budget as the chair. I would appreciate being copied on anything to do with the budget and allow me to go request this. As the chair of the budget committee. Thank you.
Well, we can change that too.
No, you can't.
I don't want to even discuss it right now, you know, Greg.
Well, why didn't you step up to be the budget chair when there was a need back in October? The process needed to start a hell of a lot earlier than me getting here. We were in trouble all along. None of you can answer the questions around the trouble we're in. None of you understand it. Auditor comes in and tells us we're a minimum $500,000 in trouble. None of you believe him. And Glenn was sitting there and heard it firsthand. But Glenn is not good enough.
Here, let me give you my microphone so you can keep going on, okay?
That doesn't help. Doesn't help the taxpayers. We do not need to create three separate budgets.
You know what?
One budget committee,
You
please.
don't control me. I was elected just like you were to sit up here. If I want to do this, I will do this. If you have a problem with that, that's your problem. All
I would
right?
appreciate-
And I would appreciate you to stop. And let's go on to other business and stop your rant proving how great you are.
Ma'am, we need to work as a team if we are
You
working
want to work
against
as
each
a
other.
team? Do you want to tell everybody how you spoke to me after that council meeting and how I asked you to call me? You want to tell everybody how you treated me? I don't want to talk to you about that.
I don't know, your perception of how I treated
Oh,
you is what you're
Come on,
upset
Ray,
about.
let's go, let's move on.
Well, I think, well, no, I guess it turned into a budget
And
conversation.
you know what? I make a motion. I make a motion that we change the chair of the budget committee. I will do it. All right? And I would like to make a motion to remove, I'll make my first motion. I would like to be chair of the budget committee. Can I have somebody second it?
First, you have to have motion to remove right here.
I'd like to make, nobody second it?
What is the basis of
Wait a minute, I made a motion.
So there's a second, there's no discussion until there's a second.
Oh, I thought that the mayor had a point, though. Do we have to do anything before that?
Well, no, the third.
I'll second it.
Okay, let's move the vote.
I think it has to be.
And what is the
A and C.
basis of your motion?
First of all,
I'd like to know, if you could please tell me how the chair of the committee had been appointed
It's my nomination with the consent of the governing body.
for the chairman of
Well, for the committee,
committee.
I appoint all committees with the consent.
Okay, but what about the chair?
So that would be my nomination. My nominations, Councilman Yazdi, chair, members, Dorfman, and two.
You know, if
That was
that's,
consent of the council.
yeah, but that consent has already been provided, so, you know, I mean, from my perspective, if the mayor has made an appointment with the advice and consent of the council,
Is this a mayor's appointment?
With advice and consent of the council.
if that's the case, then it would be up to the mayor to make that change with the advice and consent of the council, or for the individual to relinquish that position. I don't believe it would be appropriate for the council to make that change without the mayor's making that actual appointment or the individual stepping aside.
I think the reason we got to this point, Ray, is that you are constantly telling us you want to work as a team, and then we sit up here and you constantly cry politics, and you were the one who said that nobody wanted to be the chair of this committee, and now you want to be the chair. You have two personalities. A great personality when we're a committee, and when we're sitting in public, you have to break apart anything that you say as a team. Stop telling us what the vote was, and who made it and who didn't. Stop telling us that we're political. We are trying to work with you. And I'd like to state that when I ask the finance department or I ask Jane for something, I'm asking it for my own education. Not because I'm trying to override your chairmanship of the budget committee. It's to learn, it's to get information. I understand what's happening without a person in that department. I didn't want something immediately. I definitely understand that Ted, if he would like me to copy him on request, I will definitely do that. But I don't see why I cannot ask for information as a member of this council. Just like when I want to put something on the agenda, I shouldn't have to get anybody's permission.
You don't. Whoever told you that?
Well, I
Nobody.
keep asking, why do you want it? Why do you want it?
No, that was on the reval
Yes.
process.
Yes.
And my question was, why? Again, we don't have much of an influence in that process. My question to you is, why you want an agenda?
Okay.
I'm not going to stop you from putting it there. I'm never going to stop you from putting anything on the agenda. I have one more thing to say, but first I'll defer to John. Councilman Romano, you have something?
I just have a comment regarding what's going on here, and obviously there's heads, but anytime you work at any committee, and if you're requesting information, there has to be some type of chain of command. Ted's in charge of upstairs, they work for Ted. If you follow a chain of command and you go through Ted, and he's aware of what's going on, you'll get your information. If you're not getting it in a timely fashion, it's really Ted's responsibility to make sure you're getting it. If you're on a committee, and Linda, if you're requesting information, or Joanne's requesting information, the whole committee should be CC'd, so everybody's on the same page.
That would be great, but
Okay.
I'm not notified on a lot of things.
Well, that's wrong.
Am I right, Linda?
No, just
When
leave
you
it.
get an email from Ray, is it CC to me? I have never seen an email
Well,
CC.
if that's the case, that's 100% wrong.
Well,
Why-
now
let me-
it
let-
shows-
just
I
why
have
example-
emails right now.
Please, just for example, we're having a meeting on Monday. I sent Ted a request to set the meeting, I copied Mark, and I copied Linda on it. We're a committee. We're working, in my eyes, as one. It's the only way it's going to work. If Ray is calling a meeting, he should copy his committee, including Ted and John, on it, so everybody's on the same page, and we will get done. This has got to stop on all angles. It has to stop.
I agree.
Or we're getting nowhere. We've been here for almost 3 months, and we've accomplished, in my eyes, nothing. That's my opinion. We need to move on and get past all
We need
this.
to have civil on our committee.
I agree.
And we need to have a great understanding and respect for another person. And we have to have respect for people in the audience that would like to attend. And I think it's wrong how Linda is getting beat up every time at a council meeting. She is no longer on council, and every meeting Linda Huntley's name is brought up, and I don't think that's fair, and we have to move on. You have a problem with her. That's your problem with her, and I wish you would stop making it public. And
Well-
let's move forward.
Well, let's
Can I
wrap
speak?
Well, before,
I
I just want to say
got
one
beat up
thing.
on both ends here.
For the record, the reason Linda Huntley's name has been mentioned is because the majority has put it on the agenda to appoint her to the budget committee.
Right.
That's
Just
why
like
it's been on
Mark
the agenda.
Young was put on the committee when I beat him by 500 votes. Am I right, Glenn? And did we sit up here and act like this? No.
Excuse me, she was pulled off.
Last week.
Okay,
Last meeting.
why did that name come up again?
What?
I pulled it.
Right.
So no.
You want to talk about chain of command? I'm the president of the council. I pulled it. It was done. That issue, gone.
It's never
It's not
done.
coming back.
I
No, chain of command, you just said it. I'm the president of this council, he's the mayor. He stands over me. That's it. Chain of command, I pulled it. It was a dead issue. She was not going on your budget committee.
But he wasn't referring to, he didn't refer to that.
No, he spoke about chain of command and he was heading the chair, okay? I pulled it.
The issue
As
is
the president of the council. Now it comes up again.
not the issue of being on the budget committee.
It just came up.
Were you in the room when the auditor told us we have a minimum $500,000?
I will have the
Yes or no?
auditor here at the next meeting so he will answer all the questions of the public and your questions. How's
That
that?
would be fantastic.
I will have him here.
That would be fantastic.
No problem.
But now, you're asking me to respect your chain of command, so please allow me to speak in order for us to have mutual respect.
Go ahead.
Is that fair?
Yes.
The very first meeting I sat here, I said, it's against all my training, all my professional training, to sit here, look at the problem, and blame the person before me, rather than going to it and trying to fix it.
Right, we took
I
that
never,
in
ever.
consideration. I took that in consideration.
I never, ever have blamed Linda,
Oh,
or
God, I hope I didn't get struck by lightning.
Please.
I'm out of respect for you, I'm not going to mention the name anymore.
Thank you.
Okay? But Linda and Joanne, this has stopped. It's got to stop. The
Right,
way you
you're
speak
the
to
one
me.
who is, right? Right, please, stop. Mayor, I made a motion, it was second, can we vote on it?
No.
No.
The motion's died.
Well, it's a shame.
See, this hostility's got to stop. You've already, both of you, have admitted to me and our professional staff that you do not have the background or understanding, you do not understand this budget. I'm the only person that has a financial background. And I will talk to you. I will respect you, I will talk to you about that.
Can I just make a comment there, if I may? The question came up about the request for information, and I understand the governing bodies, various concerns about what they need, but I just want to say that in this form of government, from the employee's perspective, just keep in mind, they really can only serve one master, and that's the governing body, mayor governing body, through the administrator. So what I think you have to recognize what's happening is if there's 3 requests to an employee, it puts them in a very difficult position to wonder, who do I really answer first, notwithstanding my own responsibilities. So I would just say, from a legal structure, just like you would in a corporation, you really want to consider, short of putting together a policy, just going through the administrator and putting your request to him, who could then delegate and make sure that the assignments are prioritized in a certain way, so you don't put the employees in the position not knowing really whom to answer first. And I think you may streamline that process or any duplication if you could all agree to work that way.
Thank you. And that was, wait, excuse me, one second. That was the moral of the story. The administrator just brought up in his report the fact that our finance department is down. Linda, just want to make sure you hear this. Our finance department is obviously shorthanded. Any requests for information, please go through Ted so that Sherry is not inundated with, these requests. Ted will help her accommodate. The officers are entitled to anything you request. I'm not even going to the content like the 2008 trial reports on public events, how that can help us in 2012 moving forward. That's not even the issue. The issue is moving forward to the entire governing body. Go through Ted, who then disperses work to staff members to provide the councilperson's request, especially in this time when we're so short-handed in the finance department. That's what this conversation was to be about, right? Ted? Okay. The reason it turned ugly is because I asked you, what did you need this for? Was it for the budget? And you said yes, and that's when Chairman Yazdi got upset. Because if it is for the budget, he should be aware of it. I don't think anyone disagrees with that. Council President stated, chain of command.
Thank you.
Okay? So That's what turned it ugly, is you said it was for the budget. Your request of these financials. So that's the moral of the story. Go through Ted. Moral of the story, if you want something as a committee member, go through the chair. Always include the chair in your request. Is everyone good for a moment? Okay. Ted, anything else? Good answer. Any department reports? I know we received, you all are copied on the police department's monthly report, which our fine chief, who's in the room, does just such a great job on those reports.
And
Thank you, chief.
I want to say, those reports over the last year, I like whatever new system it is that you're using, the new computer, it's called Log or something. It's really refined, so it's so excellent, and that within a few minutes you can figure out everything that's gone on and all of what's happening, so thank you for your report.
So, pending business, item in discussion regards to state redevelopment development plan. And ask, and if everyone would indulge me, Meredith Mastella, please come up. Meredith is the one who asked for this information. Last meeting we ran out of time. We promised Meredith it would be on, not at 9:30, but and we all were copied on Fred's February 14th memo. Now, Fred, if I'd ask you to first give us the background.
Yeah.
And then Meredith can ask any questions you need. Sure.
You're not going to sandbag me now with these few questions, so I ain't there. Well, Mayor, the state has a plan for development and redevelopment. And the last one, I believe, was put together in the late 1980s. And the plan was extensive. And it was a way where the state tried to serve as a guide to steer development in certain sections of the state of New Jersey. During that time period, there was what was called a cross-acceptance process, where it asked municipalities for feedback, and ultimately the state plan was adopted. It took about 300 or 400 pages, which I, through various land use litigation, had a lot of familiarity with. But the state plan at that time had different designations from PA, planning areas 1 through 5, and there were 2 designations for the borough of Bloomingdale, most notably PA2, which is more in your developed areas, and PA5, which is really for preservation. What since has come forward is the new state plan, which is probably only about 30 or 40 pages, but nonetheless still lacks some specifics with respect to delineating various areas. What the plan now speaks about is a targeted economic growth area, planning for vibrant regions, preservation type area. And I, thus far, based on my conversations with other planners and reading this plan, I think in some ways it's going to mimic the last state plan with your areas of conservation and your areas of what would be called as growth. But it's not yet been determined. So there's these various aspects of the plan. The mapping hasn't been completed. Certainly when you have state plans, the question is rightfully raised, is this somehow going to override or take precedence over your own zoning? Or how will it affect your own zoning? And we saw with the prior state plan, it did have some effect, where if you zone consistent with the state plan, your ordinances were upheld. And if you zone inconsistently, your ordinances, land use ordinance, could be challenged. So at this point in time, the state has, I believe, concluded their public hearings. I would anticipate there's going to be more revisions and possibly more public hearings. But nonetheless, that's sort of the thumbnail sketch of the overview. It certainly is critical as to any designations for the borough, because, for an example, if the portion of your borough that is presently, we'll call preservation, it's really more of your green areas of the municipality, your open space, if that were somehow targeted as an economic growth area, it could put various pressures on the municipality, or vice versa. Like you have, for example, I think it's termed the horse farm. And, that designation for property that's sort of, in some ways considered preservation, in some ways considered potentially growth, I think that designation would be significant as to what the state ultimately does. But that's where we are right now. I think there'll be more details to follow. I think it was a good point to raise just to give you an overview as to where we are, where the state is in this process.
And Meredith, we went, again, obviously I was aware this was going on. You asked for us to give you some feedback. What are your issues?
Hello. Meredith Marcitello, 43 Bailey Avenue. I have actually a bit of a prepared statement. I hope it's not too long, but it is an extensive topic. I went to the meeting to the Freelandhausen Arboretum in Morris Plains. I've also viewed parts of some video that's online. It's available not through the state. The state did not have video there. In Morris Plains, there didn't appear to be anybody from the press there. They've had 6 public meetings for 21 counties. It's not, we talk about transparency, that's not very transparent. That's not allowing for much public input. And the impression that the public got was that even though we were allowed to speak, we probably couldn't affect much change to the draft plan. That it was pretty much set the way it would be, that there might be a few minor revisions. But the video, if anybody is interested in seeing it, is on the Bayshore Tea Party's website. Their people had gone to all 6 meetings and taken video. Again, one of the concerns was that there were not enough meetings. We asked if they could hold more meetings. They're not limited to 6. They had to have a minimum of 6. And there was no, they said, that's it, we're having 6. Many of the citizens had concerns that 2000 census data was used instead of 2010 census data. So the data used is out of date. There were concerns, which these are my deepest concerns, about vague terminology and lack of clear protection of private property rights. Some citizens had concerns that this was a form of UN Agenda 21. Many asked questions about who the stakeholders are. It's throughout the plan, the stakeholders, we met with the stakeholders this. The answer given was that they are in the draft plan on Figure 1. If you look at it, on May 4th of last year, they had a local government stakeholder meeting for, sorry, it's not what I gave you, for Bergen, Essex, Hudson, Passaic, and Union. I don't know if anyone on this governing body was aware of that. If anybody in Bloomingdale, in terms of the planning board, attended that. So when they say the public at the private citizen level was involved in the stakeholder meetings, that doesn't sound very convincing to me. When asked for specific names of people or groups, because you can look at this later or it's in the state plan, there are no specifics other than counties. And maybe, we met with some infrastructure services, public-private developers, infrastructure, natural resources. When asked for specific names of people or groups, we were told to send an email requesting that, and they would provide it. When I read within the plan stakeholders, I, like most people, think that means the property owners. We have a real stake in this, as it is our property. However, as I educate myself further on sustainable development, I find that stakeholders refers to special interest groups. And there were many in attendance who commented during the public comment session. The meeting that I was at, 15 of private citizens spoke, made comments, and there were 17 NGOs, for lack of a better word, non-governmental organizations. Sierra Club was there, Jeff Tittle, many different environmental groups. There were several planners that were there representing planning companies. There were a couple mayors, or freehold. There was a freeholder, and they all spoke in pretty much agreement of the plan, with the exception that the environmentalist groups felt concerned. They had concern that the plan didn't go far enough, and particularly that there was no map. They wanted a map. I don't know if the state plan is Agenda 21, but there's certainly many similarities, and my primary concern is that there's nothing written about protection of private property. Passaic County is already a member of ICLEI, which is the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives, and ICLEI is a UN-accredited NGO whose goal is to promote Agenda 21. And for further background, Agenda 21 was voted on in 1992 in Rio at a global council, and they're about to go down to Rio again this summer for Rio Plus 20. So if we have the regional plans that the state plan is encouraging, it's not much of a leap of logic to presume that a region, including Passaic County, would work towards the goals of Agenda 21. I have a quote from this document, which is a UN document called The Future of Local Agenda 21 in the New Millennium by J. Gary Lawrence. J. Gary Lawrence served as President Clinton's served on President Clinton's Council on Sustainable Development. What happened was, after Rio, George H.W. Bush signed on to the agreement. It went to the Senate as a treaty, and the Senate voted it down. Our representatives voted it down, said the citizens of America don't want it. And then after that, President Clinton decided to create, by executive order, a Council on Sustainable Development, and did many things, and it's kind of crept into our government since then. But the quote from J. Gary Lawrence is that other places have been much slower to adopt Local Agenda 21, LA 21. In the case of the U.S., our local authorities are engaged in planning processes consistent with LA 21, but there is little interest in using the LA 21 brand. Participating in a UN-advocated planning process would very likely bring out many of the conspiracy-fixated groups and individuals in our society, such as the National Rifle Association, citizen militias, and some members of Congress. This segment of our society who fear one world government and a UN invasion of the United States through which our individual freedom would be stripped away would actively work to defeat any elected official who joined the conspiracy by undertaking LA 21. So we call our processes something else, such as comprehensive planning, growth management, or smart growth. This is not a conspiracy. You can go to the UN websites and read about Agenda 21. You can go, there's recently been revealed a C-SPAN video from 1992 of Representative Nancy Pelosi pushing Agenda 21, as well as some other congressmen. But based on that, I just would pay closer attention to the state plan. Some of the questions and concerns I have with the goals that are mentioned on Fred's sheet. Goal 1, targeted economic growth. There are no proven strategies for economic success, such as lower taxes, regulatory reform, or right-to-work laws. Goal 2, vibrant regions. This institutes regional planning. What say will the private citizen have in a regional planning process? As mentioned before, Passaic County is a member of ICLEI, so the planning is done with ICLEI goals in mind, and ICLEI promotes UN Agenda 21. It talks about appropriate growth. Who is deciding what is appropriate? Shouldn't it be the residents of the community through their elected representatives? Now, I gave you all a Garden State values sheet. Shoot. Now I'm missing one of my sheets. No, part of my speech. No, I wrote out what I was saying, and it's my prepared remarks. Oh, I think I could probably remember. Garden State Value 1, concentrate development and mixed uses, and it talks about keeping things within walking distance for everybody, build with suitable designs and densities, and support walking, biking, and public transportation. This is not a Garden State value in my mind. This is not how we're living. Councilman D'Amato, Yazdi, and myself, we all live on Bailey Avenue. We could walk here very easily. I'm sure we didn't. I know I didn't. Garden State value 4, create high quality livable places. Wasn't quite sure what livable meant, because a lot of times we find that the terms used in these plans, like I said with stakeholders, we think they mean one thing and they end up meaning something else. They're quite vague. So I went online and looked up livability, and I came across the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development Office of Sustainable Housing Communities, and they have a fiscal year 2011 Sustainable Communities Regional Planning Grants. So the federal government is already into doing regional planning. And They have 6 livability principles, and they match up quite nicely with the Garden State values and the goals of our state plan. Garden State Value 6, Advance Equity. Equity has several meanings. Again, I went online. It can mean fairness, impartiality, justice, or anything that is fair or equitable, or the value of your property beyond the total amount owed on it in mortgages and liens. And there's some legal definitions of equity. And many people at the meeting wanted it defined, particularly in the written plan. When pressed by the public, Mr. Kennedy, who ran the meeting, defined it as the equity in your property. Well, I would ask, why wouldn't they just refer to it then as property value, rather than, quote, equity of property owners? The public asked several times for a glossary to be included in the final plan, but they would not guarantee it. Something as important and wide-reaching as a state plan should have defined terms so that we all know we're talking about the same thing. Why would they not include a glossary? Garden State Value 7, Diversify Housing Opportunities. I personally don't feel that this is a function of the state government. Garden State Value 8, Provide for Healthy Communities through Environmental Protection and Enhancement. Bloomingdale already is over 50% open space. How much more do we need? There's something called the Wildlands Project, and they have a map, and they want to push everybody into urban developments. And if you look at this map, your jaw will drop. And the map, Bloomingdale, in a sense, at this point, is now a small version of this map. We are being pushed out of this town by open space. More than 50, someone at the public meeting got up and talked about Montgomery and how they were 30% open space, and said, how much more do we need? And I forgot to say, hey, we've got 50. But just remember that increased preserved land means less privately controlled land and less future value. Once you preserve land in a deed, it's done. That's it. The future generations can't change that, as far as from my understanding. Make decisions within a regional framework. What does regional planning do to home rule? On page 38, it states, in addition, relationships with additional federal agencies must be formed or enhanced. The EPA, the Federal Highway Administration, and the Department of Housing and Urban Development, as they are now promoting a new federal agenda for healthy and sustainable communities. Be aware that the U.S. is, as I said, they've signed on to Agenda 21. And now, just as the state would like to streamline state agencies, President Obama is trying to streamline federal agencies. If the state plan says we must work with the federal government, then it will be much harder to stop this global planning from having an influence and impact on our private property rights. While the state and federal government are not implementing top-down zoning, they are leading us in that direction, in the direction of their choice. The state will steer us in the direction they choose by funding projects they see as promoting Garden State values. And they have in there mentioned they're going to have a scorecard. And based on your scorecard is whether or not you're going to qualify for funding. For a borough that is in severe financial difficulty, this funding will be enticing. Let's say that the region or state decides it would like to have a public hiking trail around Campy Lake that connects to Northern Green State Park. And that might be one reason why the land at Campy Lake is going up in value. It's now almost completely surrounded by Northern Green State Park. In 1988, the park didn't come near Campy Lake. Think it can't happen. What part of this plan, I ask, could stop it? Councilwoman Shortman is looking to implement a riverwalk on Main Street, and I would presume that would be done by eminent domain. So what's to stop that process, that same process at Campy Lake? Or any of the other lakes? What's to stop some sort of state-planned ecotourism that they've decided for the region of northwest New Jersey, the Skylands, the Highlands, that would infringe on the privacy of any of our lake communities or our borough in general? These grants and funding projects may help our town in the short term, but what impact do they have for the long term? We need to be aware of that. We need to be certain we are not surrendering our local and individual property rights in the process. Thank you.
Question for you.
Sure.
And don't take this the wrong way, but we started off with that we have too much open space in this town. And then all of a sudden, you're talking about preserving areas, not to have river walks through the back of Canphy Lake.
Preserving private property rights. Do you want on Morse Lakes a public hiking trail? And now you've lost some of your private property
I have
rights?
already, trust me.
Well, they may be illegally a public hiking trail.
It's not fun.
But I'm saying
I
legally.
feel-
I mean, don't the people on Main Street have a right to riverfront property?
Do they have a right?
They've purchased the property. Don't they have a right to riverfront property?
What do you mean by a right for the riverfront property? For the river walk, you mean?
No. As a private property owner, if I bought a property on Main Street that bordered the river, why should some government entity, whether it's a borough of Bloomingdale or the state of New Jersey or the federal government, say, we're going to now have a river walk there, and so...
Oh, for eminent domain?
Yeah,
Being
I mean, that's...
taken over? Well, it's the same way, it's the same thing that...
What I'm saying is with this plan, my opinion of this plan is that it makes it easier for things like that to happen.
I agree.
And that's my concern.
This is the same thing as a builder's remedy, more or less. Where they just come in, and one person decides it for the sake of a town.
Yes, and I'm saying that we need to turn away from that. We need to, I mean, one of the reasons we have not as much building in this town as we could is because of the complexity of all the different state agencies not talking to each other in a sense. I mean, sometimes it works against, sometimes it works in our favor because we're able to slow the process down. And I think that's my concern, that streamlining it makes it harder to slow down. Sometimes it works against our favor, like with the Walter T. Bergen project, where
But the point is,
puts us out.
ultimately, it should be home rule, where...
That's, yes.
Meredith's point, if you look at Agenda 21, it's some scary stuff. It's really Big Brother-ish. The whole thing is Big Brother-ish, where the government's going to come in, and this is the whole point of... Meredith's not just talking about our state plan. She's talking, it all stems back to what our state's supporting, what the federal supporting, you know...
And the state's been doing some of this stuff before Agenda 21 even came around.
Correct.
So, but they work in conjunction with each other, the more I've been reading.
Do you think the current state plan is going to make any difference? I mean, change anything? They're going to change the names. Right now we're Planning Area 2, Planning Area 5, Highlands. All that seems to be pretty much the same overlay we already have. So I mean...
Perhaps. I guess my biggest concern is it's so vague. And like Fred said, I mean, there's no map, there's no... And there are terms...
Sure.
I would hope so, yeah.
But would there be public input on the map? Probably not.
I would say if we did get the mapping, keep in mind that the prior state plan, the only case law that was really impacted by this was 5-acre type zoning was supported by, in certain areas because of the state plan. In other words, there really wasn't any law or cases that evolved because of the state plan which compelled municipalities to take any type of action. Some of the things that you're concerned about, I understand. The only thing I can say is thus far over the last 20 years, except for zoning, we haven't really seen anything where it did overreach. There may have been an attempt and a lot of concern, but it didn't happen. And thus far, I think if we look in hopes that the mapping does give us that clarification, I know I would feel a lot better. And I think it would
Yeah, and
address
if
a
some of
lot
the and if some of the terms were defined. I mean, and I just have concern. I think that
Be
it. I
careful
think
what
it,
you wish for. The
well,
last state plan had terms that
Of the
could
what?
have
Yeah, I'm
terms
sure.
in many different ways. Maybe it's just better off. waiting.
But I think if we want economic growth, I think that sometimes that innovation comes from a lack of planning. When people see a need somewhere, and when they want to regionalize things like the pharmaceutical industry and push them all into one part of the state, I think that's concerning. I mean, I brought up at the public comment at the meeting that Butler had the rubber mill, and would that have happened under a plan like this? I don't think it would have. I don't think they would have allowed a rubber mill factory to go in the middle of farmland in the middle of nowhere. And I grew up in Burnsville, and they have a glitter factory in the middle of a cow farm. That would be, no-no, and they actually have a very symbiotic relationship with I think they own the cow farm as well, or something like that. I mean, it works very well, probably like a Ben and Jerry's. I don't know, but I think that the planning would prevent things like that. and not necessarily help with the spurring economic growth. But like I said, my major concern is that it just seems like an open door to, yeah, it hasn't happened in the past, it's not happening now, but if there's nothing in there to prevent it from happening, how do we protect ourselves? How do we protect our private property? So, and the other thing I did want to bring up, and I have a copy if you did want to read it for everybody, is that with Agenda 21, the Republican National Committee actually passed a resolution to make the public aware of Agenda 21. So when people say, oh, it's a conspiracy and you're a conspiracy wacko, it's not, you know, the Republican National Committee is taking it seriously. And, you know, so if you, I would like to see this council pass a resolution expressing concerns with the state plan on behalf of private property owners. I would not, knowing how our budget process is right now, I mean, the Republican National Committee resolution, I wouldn't ask you to pass that because it tells you, it says that you're not going to take any grant monies that are related to these type of things, and I know that I can't ask you guys to do that now. I just ask that when you do look at grants, look at them very carefully, because nothing comes free, and there might be strings attached that we don't want attached to us. So.
What are your thoughts about, I mean, not tonight, but the resolution, Fred, I'm looking at you, just, you know, as far as, I mean, that's, I guess the governing body you're talking about as a whole, gives an opinion on it. But you don't want to do a resolution that could then hinder you, you know.
Yeah,
I know it's true.
Funding another day, I mean, it's a.
I understand, I understand.
There's a number of groups right now that have expressed concerns, and I could at least try to summarize what they are, so that the governing body could look at the concerns with respect to the report, and see if they, you know, hit home.
What do you think, because I haven't seen anything in the League of Municipalities on an opinion on this either, so I'll have to look at that.
Well, I mean, that's another, I did look on the League of Municipalities to see if they had anything, and the only thing I found, they had a resolution for something about water pipes, which, or water systems, which I know we're sort of working on ourselves, but talking about how they wanted more coordination from the federal government. I think that's totally the wrong direction. We need to look closer to home to fix things, not further away.
I'll have to see what their position is, if they're taking, I don't take a position on every issue. All right, let us look at the possibility of doing a resolution. What is the timeframe, seriously, on adoption? I mean, it still has to.
They couldn't even, people asked when they were going to have a revised plan for us to read, they couldn't answer it.
If they revise the plan, more public hearings than one would imagine.
No, I don't think so. It would be this was just, these were public hearings on the draft plan, the final draft, I guess, but they still said they were going to make changes.
So the planning.
And they have to add the map, I guess.
Planning council is the one who's going to adopt this, then ultimately the governor has to sign it, right? Or is it all, he's got
I think that entity is.
I think it's just from within the Office of Public Advocacy, which is, that used to be they keep changing the names. We had the Office of Smart Growth, which was part of the Business Action Center, and now they've changed that to the Office of Planning Advocacy. But there's also a State Planning Commission.
Ted, did you just want to say?
My only concern of this whole issue is that we saw the results of what the Highlands did. What was in preservation, what was out of preservation. It was a great thing in concept, but it hurt a lot of towns. It hurt this town.
And people's property value just dropped instantly.
But I think that's a good point, but I also want to say that this, to me, at least right now, does not have the legal teeth that the Highlands Act has. It just doesn't. I mean, I thought the same things he actually used in my report, that this doesn't have that type of ramifications, at least, you know, anything I've read.
It doesn't, and it even says in there that the problem with the old state plan is that it didn't have teeth, it didn't have any legislative authority, or any kind of authority. That they talk throughout it that they want to push the legislature to adopt certain things and push certain offices to, so they're not just sitting, it's not harmless in a sense. They're going to push us in the direction they want. That's the impression I got, and push the legislature in the direction they want.
The only concern is that I've tried to work on some issues that affect the borough and trying to get the Highlands Commission to move that line in any direction to
change legislation.
Yeah, and I think even the state doesn't even know how it's going to interact with the Highlands and Pinelands and Meadowlands commissions, and there's one other commission they have to do.
Well, I was just overlaid the existing PA5s and PA2s, didn't really take what was existing into consideration at all.
No,
There are,
no, we wouldn't want to get zoned as completely preservation, and then, you know, some new big corporation wants to move here, and we can't do anything. You know, we can't offer that to them because the land is all locked up and nothing to do.
it's already happening, but yeah.
Yeah, we want to move in the other direction. That's kind of the point I made at the meeting.
Let me do a little more homework on, bring a resolution forward. And,
But I can give a copy of the RNC resolution. I don't know how much.
yeah, no, I haven't, we haven't actually got it. What did you speak to Cardinale, Senator in Assembly? Or did they even give you the position on it?
No, the only time was at the meeting in Wanacue that you were in attendance, you and John were in attendance, and I'm disappointed that, yeah, it seems like he's kind of like, well, our hands are tied, there's nothing we can do.
At that meeting, you pretty much talked about Agenda 21, not so much the plan, the state plan, I thought.
Someone at the meeting had brought up Agenda 21, and they said, oh, well, that's not really, you know, that's UN, and that's, you know, whatever, and I said, no, it's the state plan, you know, much of it is the state plan, and they really just, I don't know, I don't think they're, I think they really think that they can't do anything. That scares me too, I mean,
Oh, especially if they're...
they're the elected representatives.
Fred and I will do a little more
So,
homework.
but
See if
thank
it's
you
something we
for
can
the
follow.
attention on the
Of
matter.
course. Thank you, Mary. Interesting stuff. Okay, next item, adoption resolution 2012 3.1, governing body certification of annual report corrective action plan. This is 2010's audit. You all received the big black book, and we need to, and I'm going to pass this down, we need to certify. You've all read it, received it, and I need a motion as such. Yazdi, is there a second? Second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I have a point to make on the recommendations
Sure.
in it. I was a little surprised that the corrective actions, that the recommendations were carried over from the year before. Why, apparently the recommendations were made in 2009, and then they were made again in 2010, because they had to be carried over. I was concerned that they weren't addressed in 2009.
Well, that should be one of our goals, is goal setting, to make sure those corrective items are resolved.
And to be updated with the corrective actions that are now listed, that, you know, we're following through on.
I don't disagree.
Because most of the corrective actions have been there more than 1 year.
Mostly minor, but I agree. Okay, anything else? Roll call?
Councilmembers Cox?
Yes.
Bonner?
Yes.
Toots?
Yes.
Schiffman?
Yes.
Short?
Yes.
Yes.
Item C has been moved to executive session comparing auditor contracts. Item D is related to that, so those two will hold for now. Just to move along here, if everyone's okay, I mean, unless you have something specific on goal setting, we'll continue to carry that. Status on property on Van Dam Ave. This was at the request of Councilwoman Shortman. Just to bring everyone up to speed, I don't know the address off the top of my head, but this was a home setback off Van Dam that was condemned in the flood, condemned by the town, and condemned by the insurance company on the building. The owner was cited to remove the buildings, and to date has not. So the building department has issued summons so that concern may be this owner will just vacate the building, and if it was to fall back on us for demolition, we'll have a lien on the property that covers some of those costs.
Have anything on the collapsed building on the next?
No, that's all I have now. The collapsed building, I believe, was summons as well. I don't have any more detail on that. That's collapsed already. I mean, it's a different owner though. Jane, I'll carry archiving over. No, we're waiting on the other company. We haven't got firm numbers yet. We don't have to do anything tonight. It's a budgetary item as well, so we'll carry that. Discussion regards to 4-day work week schedule for construction. A couple meetings ago, Dan Heiberg was here stating he felt His 4-day schedule worked better, particularly because of staffing, and we didn't take any action on it. Councilwoman Bertucci, you mentioned something that may have to do with not a specific employee, but staffing, that you wanted to go to executive session, and you never brought it up in executive session. So, you guys want to discuss this or take action on this? Again, we have department heads for a reason, and you know, when they make a recommendation, I would like to support it. My mechanic says I need new brakes, I get new brakes. Anyone want to talk about this?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I think we should go by the recommendation of Dan. It's not going to cost the borough anything. It's going to make our citizens happier and more convenient. And I think we should trust Dan's recommendation and let him run his department the way he sees fit and support it.
It would just be this department going back to an 8 to 6 p.m. schedule 4 days a week. Again, primarily due to, we did a survey, contractors prefer the extended hours, and then also based on staffing. That's the primary issue of staffing. You have part-timers that have trouble covering if one is out sick or on vacation, covering a 5-day work week without extending that part-timers out. So I too agree with John as far as moving forward. I mean, any other comments?
I don't like it at all. I think we should have a 5-day work week. If you're gonna have this construction going on over here. Perfect example was 2 weeks ago we had a holiday. They were off on Thursday, and they were off on Monday for the holiday. You did an inspection on Friday or Tuesday, and that wasn't the day. It's almost the whole week for an inspection.
Didn't Dan state that really he's still going to be here the 5 days?
This is for the clerical staff too.
You know, and then a lot of times when people have Thursday off and then a Monday off on a holiday, you know, a lot of times they'll take a Wednesday off or extend it to a Tuesday, take another day, sick day or vacation day. And, I mean, I spend a lot of time waiting for inspectors. And I definitely, you know, don't like the Monday to Thursday.
I've talked to one business owner who gets many permits in town to work, and she told me that it is much better to have it open 5 days a week. And a couple of other individual contractors who say they much rather have it open on Friday than late.
So,
I'm not in favor of
again, I'm going by what our department head said was better for his department. Yes.
Just remind the council that the price of gas is going to go to almost $5 a gallon, and we're not going to be paying our borough employees raises. I don't think that's in the cards. So when gas goes $5 a gallon, and we have employees that are going to come here, you're going to see less traffic. I would like at least to attempt to offer some of these considerations for the employees anyway. Because this is going to be a factor.
Yeah, I'm surely motivated by the recommendation of the department head who deals with it on a day-to-day basis. We don't. We don't want it to run business owner who supports the idea. At the end of the survey, it was overwhelming. The contractor's request to have those late hours.
I didn't see the survey.
We
Did we get copies?
contract request or
What did we get? I didn't get a copy of it in my book.
contract?
It was both. We did a general survey.
Mr. Cochran, what time do you work until?
What time do I work till? Whatever time it takes, 4 to 6, 10, whatever.
Most days.
Well, we usually work 7 to 3, is what our usual work day is,
Right.
yes.
And if that office was open until 6, you would have an opportunity to go in and put in filing for permits, right?
It's part of the job, is comply with permits.
I know me as a homeowner would prefer that, and part of the public that works until 5 p.m. would prefer that. So I can see some value to that, and then if we have to pay more man hours, because most mornings I do stop in, go over whatever budgetary purposes, whatever questions may be, and sometimes I'm looking over, and if Dan is out on an inspection, and Maureen is not in, that office is closed.
Well,
So people have
Dan's
to,
not the building inspector.
but he does go out on inspection.
Dan's not the building inspector. We have a building inspector.
He does go out on inspection.
Dan's not the building inspector.
My point being, when Dan is not there, and if Maureen is off that day, because of timing, they have to shut that door. I think we should listen.
You can vote that way you want. My opinion is, if you have a building department, people build 5 days a week, 6 days a week. You need a building department that's there when you need them 5 days a week. You need this time for your problem.
So we're just going to support paying the extra amount it would take to keep it open.
It's still the same amount of hours to keep it open. We're still working the same hours.
No, no, if they're closed now, in order to keep it open, they have to hire someone else. That's going to cost us money, that's going to cost the taxpayers of this town. I've seen it close.
There was nothing going on right now in building. I go to these towns and I get permits for 3 months into the year. That's permit number 3, and 5 for the year. There's nothing going on. Yeah.
So how do you have a
Yeah,
problem
Ted,
with that?
please.
Just mentioned that we have a problem.
I have
Getting it.
5 days a week is what we need.
Is there a motion?
No, we're having discussions. I'm going to ask for a motion now.
Can we make a motion?
Hold on, Ted has the floor for a moment, please.
All I'd like to say is that we have to understand that Bloomingdale's construction department services other communities. So we are probably busier than most building departments because we serve Butler, we serve Kellogg. The other factor is that in this times, you make the issue that we have, most building departments aren't that busy. Our options are, we either have a person there, and unless we're going to bring more staff in or pay overtime to cover that, we're going to be closed. So there's no service going on because the office is going to be closed. So they could be the busiest person in the world, or they could be there. There'll be no person in the building to facilitate that. That's the choice of the mayor and council, then so be it.
When the full-time employee is on vacation, which she's entitled to do, the part-time, being part-time, cannot cover that office, and therefore the office is closed. And on a 4-day week schedule,
We had just enough to
just
cover.
enough to cover.
No, we don't.
Again, I'm not trying to make things difficult. We have our department head who is suggesting this to be the better way to serve the borough. We should start respecting these department heads' recommendations. This is from the department. I know you have one person, I spoke to one person who pulls permits, they prefer 5 days a week. I will give more weight to our department head who deals with it every day, making this recommendation. The survey
His
was...
recommendation would probably be, if he could, to hire somebody that can cover.
But that's the point, we can't afford to do that.
It's a
All right, do I have a motion to extend construction hours 4 days a week, 8 to 6 for our residents, as per our department head's recommendation?
Are you making a motion?
I did. No, I'm asking for a motion.
I'll make
I
that
don't make
motion.
a motion. Motion by Yazdi, is there a second?
I'll say.
Any further discussion? Again, I do hope we appreciate our department head's recommendation. Roll call.
Councilmembers Tomato,
Yes.
Toots, no. Schiff,
No.
Short,
No.
Yasti,
Yes.
Pop.
No. Thanks for respecting Dan's wishes.
Maybe Dan's wishes would have been to hire somebody.
Okay, so I'll have to come back next day and say, stay 5 days a week, hire someone full-time. You gonna vote yes for that?
He didn't talk to her at the budget hearing.
You gonna vote yes for that?
Well, Ms. Shorter, this is where I speak and then you think it's politics.
Okay.
It's just common sense. You do not come out and go, his wishes would be to hire someone when you know these people have to pay for it. How can you make that comment after you just voted no for this?
Amazing.
And then you think I'm playing politics. It's all about taxes, remember that? Let's remember our promises.
All right. I mean, we'll then, we'll be on the next agenda, hire a full-time person.
No.
No. So it's neither. Okay. Still a question for money. Still more money. 13A, motion to accept resignation of Chief Financial Officer Donna Molino. That motion? So moved. Do I have a second? Second. Any discussion?
Yeah, I have discussion.
Okay.
I think it was highly unprofessional for our CFO to tell us that she was leaving on the 22nd of February And then on March 6th, to get a letter dated February 13th that she was leaving. I think a position like that would be much more appreciated if a professional would give us a proper notification.
Notice was given, I received notice of her resignation. We did not advise the governing body until we met at our last meeting. And that's, she did give proper notice. You know, and it's funny that you're worried about professionalism. Here's a professional that you and I'm sorry, not playing politics, you ignored. You ignored for the entire year. You've ignored every one of her recommendations. You kept her out of the budget process. You voided her contract. I mean, I can go on and on about the disrespect you showed to most of our employees. And you sit here tonight upset that it wasn't professional, her resignation, which was 2 weeks' notice? How
I
dare you?
did not get 2 weeks' notice.
Well, I did as mayor.
Oh, well, you should.
Motion on the table, roll call, please. Calling the question, roll call. Disrespectful, so
What am I voting on?
just accept the resignation.
Oh, I guess it's too late now. It's after March 1st. She's gone.
What is your vote?
Wait a minute. You want me to vote on something that the person's already gone?
Then why don't you pass, and then we'll come back to you.
I'll pass. Come back to me. Because you know what? I agree with Linda. Because I think this is wrong. This is the first time I saw something in writing about this.
We always worry about the past, never.
This is the first letter that I see that this should have been in my box on February the 13th when this was addressed. This is the first time I'm seeing it.
You
And they
passed.
don't want me to vote on somebody who just resigned.
We had a discussion already. There's a motion on the table, roll call. You passed.
Yes.
Short.
Yes.
Yasti.
Yes.
Conklin.
Yes.
Tomato.
Yes.
Toots.
Yes.
Item B, discussion in regards to revow. Councilwoman Shortman, you need to go any further? I think we had a nice open discussion earlier.
I think we got a lot of good input. I think that the offer of our attorney and our borough administrator to work this out would be very much accepted by me, and I'm happy for the input of our residents.
Item C, adoption of resolution 2012 3.2, amending 2012 temporary budget. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Councilmember Shipton.
Yes.
Short.
Yes.
Yasti.
Yes.
Conklin.
Yes.
Tomato.
Yes.
Toots. Yes.
Adoption of resolution 2012 3.3, authorizing agreement with Out to Bid LLC. This is an agreement. There's no cost to the borough whatsoever. This is just another outlet to advertise bid projects. This is a company that hires vendors, contractors who do bid work. And when we have a bid, we would send, like we still have to advertise in the newspaper, but we would send this company our bid spec. And then they would disperse it to their clientele.
Like headliners.
Well, more or less. There's no absolutely zero cost to the borough. It just, the theory is it would give us more bids and ultimately a better cost if we get more bids on our projects. Another avenue to get the bid out. No cost to the borough, so it's, should be a no-brainer.
Could you give me a little history behind how this came up and how this came about to be presented to us?
Yeah, this is actually, it's owned by a resident of town. He's a part owner. Brian Taggart's a part owner. He approached the administrator. It's a new venue, a venture he's doing. I don't know of any other in the state that offers a similar type program. And he approached Ted with their business plan, and Ted brought it to my attention, and I thought it was to improve. Again, there's no cost to the borough. It's agreeable. I mean, he'll charge his, let's say he has a GC that pays him X, I don't know his terms with his
Yeah,
customers.
he's gonna get a cut.
Well, they pay him a fee to get a subscription.
Right, you get on, right, it's the same thing as the news commercial.
Well, these big contractors have 2 employees just driving to New Jersey to get newspapers.
Figuring out who's going up with bid. So this will streamline, and we won't spend the money for the cost of the advertisement. And hopefully, they'll be able to advertise right there at these websites. And not to say that things are going to be diminished for newspapers,
No.
but this print material with big bucks out of James' budget every time we go out to bid, garbage truck, anything that we do. So
And again,
it'll fast forward this. And then
the
we'll-
point is to get it out to more people to get more bids. And again, do we have a motion?
Is there a
I'll make that
reason-
motion.
Is there a reason we have to have this formal sign? Just looking for,
Just an agreement?
like, too good to be true type thing?
There's no cost.
There's no cost, and
Every day.
it's sign this and it won't, and if we,
If you sign that, you go 4 days.
Well, the thing to keep in mind is that it does provide terms, for example, it holds the municipality harmless for any of there. So from a liability standpoint, I would recommend.
There's a motion by Yazdi, seconded by Schiffman. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Councilmember Short.
yes.
Yasti.
Yes.
Hoffman.
Yes.
D'Amato.
Yes.
Toots. Yes. Schiff.
Yes.
Item E, 13E, adoption resolution 2012, 3.4, declaring Halloween storm an emergency. We just received notice that finally I guess FEMA was sort of catching up on the hurricane, where now they need the declaration and a resolution form from us to process our overtime and snow removal costs for Halloween. Do I have that motion?
So move. Second.
Any further discussion?
I'm working with a group to get all this information and get it submitted to the state police, to the Office of Emergency Management, and hopefully we will receive, because candidly, we had a lot of damage and a lot of expense cleaning up from the October snowstorm, and we had all the tree branches and trees come down. There was quite a lot of debris that had to be cleaned up. And we were out chipping and cleaning up for residents for weeks to get that done.
Okay. That's right. Roll call?
Councilmember Yasti.
Yes.
Hoffman.
Yes.
D'Amato.
Yes.
Toots. Yes. Schiff.
Yes.
Short.
Yes, yeah, but we have one more item, then I'll get to that. Item F, discussion in regards to extended hours to 6 p.m. This was just the 1 day a week that Jane's office is open until 6. I'm sorry? So, right, we approved the late hours, and we were going to review it. I know Jane had mentioned something to me, so I put it on the agenda to discuss. The issue that, I'm sorry? Well, it is, you're the,
I stay with
We're the only office that
the only office is open, so Jane's here, but again, doesn't do us any good if someone comes in for, dog license or a building permit, because only Jane's here. Ted stays on his own time, just so there's no one, they're not here by themselves.
Yeah.
So I get it.
The issue is that they alternate between Terry and Jane, but there'd only be one of the ladies from the center office upstairs that are here. There's no other department open, but I don't want them in the building by themselves, so I stay those 2 hours until 6 o'clock on Tuesday to make sure there's at least 2 of us there. I just think it's wrong to have one person in the entire borough hall stay open.
No other department is here till 6. So it's up for discussion as far as just going back to 5 days a week at normal hours.
I think I had asked, how many, are we serving a lot of people between 4 and 6? Do we have any?
Most
When
of,
we were here, when we were all here, we were all it's just us. And Terry gets marriage license.
1 day a week.
1 day.
So I guess the question that
And
I
actually,
had
I
asked even in my
can't-
email was, do you have any idea of how many people you see?
I'm not the registrar, so I can't tell you.
Oh, you don't know how many people come?
Well,
Shirley knows the nights that she's there.
not
And the difference is Terry is the vital statistic registrar. She does marriage licenses and death certificates. So people that come in for a marriage license, you make a special appointment, they just don't wander in. So
Yeah.
Jane can't facilitate that when she stays late till 6 o'clock.
Terry can't facilitate building or taxes or finance or
So, and I
So-
just fill in wherever they can't cover. I mean, they could put up signs, run down and use the ladies' room if I wasn't.
I mean,
there.
I-
So there's just nobody
Is the
staffing.
The
recommendation?
recommendation is to do away with it, go back to 5 days a week till 4:30. I'm sorry, 8 to 4. And, I mean, I'd rather go 5 days a week to 6, but that was staggered hours, something we could look at later. What's that? I can be done without money, you were told that last year, but ignored it. So, yeah, so I need a motion to resume the hours
I'll make
after
that
5 days
motion.
a week.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Councilmembers Conklin. Demotta.
Yes.
Toots. Yes. Schiffman.
Yes.
Short.
Yes.
Yasi.
Yes.
Jane, thanks. Now you can work in the building department. 14, formal action on emergency items. I have nothing. Anyone have anything? Oh, I'm sorry. You know, you reminded me. There you go, excuse me. I need to add, back to 13G. We're going to add resolution 2012 3.5, declaring an emergency for purposes of awarding contract Sandra Lane and Linden Lane, $18,192.90. February 12th water main break. So I have that motion. So moved. Okay, investment, we won't have to regret. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Councilmembers Demotta.
Yes. Discussion, go back to discussion on that.
Sure.
How can we pay, on a water main break, we hired Phil Barrett, how can we pay $2,400 in overtime for utility fee? For one water main break? It's on the back page. Okay. They stated to do all the shows. The contractor is doing the repair. The water department is shutting off, trying to determine what valves in that area. And from what they tell me,
They broke the valve.
they broke the valve off, so then they had to go back and replace the valve itself in it.
Any further?
$2,400 for a one-day water main break, borough employees in overtime? I get that.
That was a Sunday, wasn't it?
It's 12, yeah. It's
12th was a Sunday.
Is that a different rate on a Sunday?
12. It's a double time. So we need 4 utility workers plus a contractor to do this? I don't have the exact,
Currently we did.
it's right here.
Right here. It's $2,496.80. It goes to $2,496.80 for overtime.
Is there further discussion? Roll call.
I can't be there and do it, so
No one's-
somebody's got to do
No
it.
one's given any answers, so.
Well, what is it on? That's the number problem.
You want to show up and do it?
I don't understand why we need all these people for water main breaks. You have Phil Barrett, who brings 2 or 3 people with him, he brings an excavator with him, and then we have 4 utility people on Sunday, it just sounds like you're throwing away money.
Our superintendent's here. Doc, I hate to put you on the spot. You want to
No,
address this?
you're not putting me on the spot. Well, first of all, I wasn't there, because I'm in DPW.
That's right.
So I really can't answer all the details, and I didn't write the report. But I am aware of the break, and then the valve that broke, and it took them a long time to shut it down. And as far as the overtime, 4 guys, I'm only aware of 2, which would be Frank and Bill, and I had 2 go out for salting, and because the whole street was covered with ice. So I did call out guys, and they get an automatic 3-hour call out for that. So equipment operator, ice, a driver, so they both get call out for 3 hours each automatically on a call out. So if that's the 4 that you're talking about, it could be. I really didn't look at the report, and I'm really not aware of it because I'm at the DPW now.
And the other 2 people, they couldn't run over to the DPW yard and get a salt truck and, get hired.
They can't use the equipment, because if they do that, you've got to call the, as far as I'm aware of, unless there's things that I'm not aware of, you have to have an equipment operator that loads the salt union rules.
I thought we voted that out. I thought that we could put anybody on the back of a garbage truck.
That's garbage truck equipment
Neighbors, yeah.
operator.
Not equipment.
So we have just a straight equipment operator?
Well, he does
That person is moved as driver or whatever, but when it comes to operating equipment, it's got to equipment operators.
Does he know how to operate a salter in a pickup truck? Why is 2 people sent out? Send the operator out. He's coming out there anyway to load the truck. Let him go salt.
we should have a discussion of it, but right this minute.
I'm just asking.
No, I'm not trying to, I don't know, I wasn't
I
physically there,
understand
but
that.
if these are the issues, I'll make some notes and we'll sit down and have a discussion. Sort it out.
Look, none of us are capable of doing this job, right? And the people that are doing it, they deserve to get paid.
It's understandable.
And they've
You know,
done it.
it doesn't
They're
take.
Monday morning quarterback and say, why did you do it this way or that
I'm
way?
voting, I second this, okay? I'm not this.
None of us are happy about these, right? We all hate the fact that these things happen.
Yeah, but I'm not happy that somebody's not making executive decisions to send one guy instead of two guys out for 3 hours each on overtime to salt.
I don't know how that went, so.
Well, you can send one guy, the operator, since nobody else knows how to run a machine or they're not allowed, but the operator can run a pickup truck, we send one guy there. The operator to fill the truck, and he can drive it and salt the road.
I think what Glenn's saying is we have to be more aware of how we're budgeting the people coming out and on call to make sure we're getting the best.
That's
bang for our
department
buck.
heads.
That's department heads. So going forward, there has to be better decisions made when these things happen.
Somebody has to be accountable for actions made. That's why you're a department head.
Okay, and again, I don't see anything you're saying.
Okay?
What you're referring to is $400 between the DPW employees who came out to salt and the labor, $400 on a Sunday, and I'm glad you're concerned about that.
I think the total amount of time, I think they're running this morning, almost 17 now.
Well, I'm glad we're speaking and we're concerned about a $400, $2,400 labor bill. Because when we come back to item 12C after closed session, I will remind you how glad I am that you're saving $2,400. Is there a roll call, please?
Councilmembers Tomato.
Yes.
Toots. Stiff.
Yes.
Short. Yes.
Yes.
Conklin.
Late public comment, have a motion open late public comment?
So move.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone wishing to speak? Please come up, state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. Jack Miller, Revap.
Hi, Jeff, how are you?
Good, yourself? Listen, what I saw here tonight, you're coming for a year, what I saw here tonight, we're all on TV, you made that statement. You guys gotta respect each other. Leave the ego at the door, all right? Let it lay. You're all here to work together to do what's right for us, okay? Let it go, please. Councilman D'Amato said it. You've done nothing. Do something, all right? Leave it at the door, that's something, all right? That's all I got on that. Something else I got here. Last month, we talked about an order of these projects that are going on.
Yes.
I would like to know, being the chairman of the flood committee, who made this order?
The engineer.
The engineer made this order. So he put lighting first before flooding issues.
I think the confusion is,
That's just how I read them. I mean,
his task list is that, I don't think it's ranked in order of importance.
No. Lighting and de-snagging and de-silting is the same as going out, is advertised, it's already been, for every 20 hours, same day.
Gotcha. Now,
So-
with that said, hold on, with that said,
Just don't mix the two together.
no, with that said, we have money already put aside for flooding issues, correct?
Specific ones that were defined in the bond ordinance, correct?
Okay. We don't have money yet for lighting, right? We don't have money yet for lighting.
Sure you do. This Monday, when it passed a referendum, they introduced the bond ordinance.
There's money for that? Okay. My concern is, this has been going on for whatever, okay? A year that I've been here, all right? Just humor me for a minute. I'd like to ask everybody here, what's more important, flooding or the lights?
But
Flooding.
Flooding,
You can't get to work if it's flooded.
okay? We need to start doing something, okay? We need to start doing something. I know, we gotta wait for this permit, we gotta wait for that permit. We gotta do something here. People are asking me what's going on. I keep telling them, we gotta wait for permits, we gotta do this, we gotta do that. You guys gotta give me something here, we gotta be able to do something.
Well, giving you dates of when things are advertised, when things are bid, and when things are to start is doing something. This is the closest this borough has come to doing anything in 90 years.
Good, then maybe it's a good thing I'm here
It's a good thing we're all here, Jack.
then. Okay. Just understand, I'm getting leaned on just like the next guy, okay?
Well, yes.
Just
Can I just suggest something?
Go ahead.
As the chairman of the
Absolutely.
flood committee, why don't you update the public on what's being discussed at these meetings, right? What are we following up on? So this way, people don't come to you and ask, you're giving a report to everyone. This way, we're informed, they're informed, and if there is something we can do about it, let's talk about it at that time.
I thought that's what our meetings were for. So we all talk. The mayor is the liaison. He brings it back to you guys. I don't have a problem standing up here. You can see that. I don't have a problem standing up here and saying what I need to say. If you want me to come up and say, listen, at this meeting, I don't have a problem. Where would that be? In this. So I don't have to wait till the end of the night to get up here and talk about that. Would I fall under department reports? Would I fall under administrative reports? Where would I go?
Department reports.
Okay.
It's one of the most important things that
It's another half.
people are working on.
Oh, yeah.
It'd be great.
But no matter, I mean, regardless of your report, none of what's left to be done is in any of our control.
Understood.
Yeah, I
Understood.
couldn't do any more than give you the dates of where, last year, the governing body introduced the ordinance. And again, these are steps, Jack. The most frustrating thing about government is how long it takes to do everything.
Boy,
Just
you're
get
telling
used to
me
that.
here.
I mean, Jack, it's painful. Get used to it. It's painful.
It is painful. It is painful.
You just have to get used to it. It's extremely painful. No,
That's hard to do.
there's nothing we can do. Here are the dates. Now, here's when you have a beef. Mayor, you said we get to July 31st, we'll get the permit to do Van Dam. And we don't have a permit? Now you got a beef. Say, council, what's going on?
I thought, and I'm gonna give you a report, I thought they walked a piece of the brook from where the sidewalk is bad to Brant Lane, I guess, right? They had recommendations to do stuff there. I don't even see that on here.
The report that you received from Mr. Domofowski was just basically a brief update. It's not a detailed report to the council. I think I know the hope is that we're going to go for this walk, we're going to identify the issues, we're going to go back, we're going to report, and if hooray, something's going to happen. I get that complete component. The problem is, anybody's taking a trip to DEP, there's a couple of...
Well, that's about the dates. You asked me the last meeting, why is it 3 months
Right.
between, you know, the DEP said minimum, DEP was
Yeah, you're applying for it on the 30th and you're not getting it until July.
90 days. DEP will not even give you a permit.
Why are we applying the 30th though, is what,
Because the engineer has to design from that walk and all the things we're doing, has to do a detailed design spec to bring to DEP.
okay.
And it's going to take the attorney and the auditor, excuse me, the engineer.
Get that off your mind, what are you talking about?
Please, don't get me wrong. It's going to take the engineer until those dates to complete what he needs to complete to submit. What I'm more concerned about is the email I saw from one of the committee members, why isn't Poplar on that
Right.
street? Because I don't think Poplar was in the original bond ordinance. Because Poplar came up after the bond ordinance.
Yeah, because that was one of the quick fixes that they said they
Right,
could take
but
care
it's
of.
not, see, the bond ordinance is specific. And Poplar is specific to what you can do. So,
I thought,
no,
Tyson, yeah, I thought.
I don't know, but I just saw Mr. Chintel's email that where's Poplar on that list? And
I thought that was there for Tice the summer we put in there.
on the original bond,
Yes,
I'd have to look at the original ordinance.
I believe so.
Ted, could you look at that? Because if it is, then we're fine. If not, we can amend the bond ordinance. To identify, not change the money, just identify.
Just-
I believe you actually could.
All right, just, I'm surprised you didn't, I thought, that's the question I thought you were gonna ask, but I didn't respond, so I didn't have an answer.
Yeah.
But that's important, because that, according to Mr. Simmons, that was one of the big problems failing in the culvert area is that pipe was undersized at all.
That was gonna come up Tuesday, I think.
Okay. So I need to know if Poplar, what was it?
Yes, but Tyson,
I don't
excuse me, Ron, can you help me with that?
Poplar was adding one pipe.
Right, but I don't think Council, Linda
I
Humby,
think it was Van Dam. We had the Van Dam flooding. I don't think we addressed any specific streets.
well, we had Van Dam whole. Right, well, as long as I'm comfortable with funding it if we can. Identify it. So what I need to do is find the original bond.
Yeah, I think it was in there.
See if we could somehow, just make sure, if not, we have to amend. I'm sorry. Yeah, sure, this one's all.
Okay,
That's-
and I don't have a problem. I'll come up here, and after we have our meeting, I'll stand up here. I don't have a problem doing that. I just want to know where I fall to what I need, where I need to go, that's all.
But we're moving. Frustrating as
Okay.
it is, it's.
Jack,
And Jack, I apologize, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, I know.
if you don't mind, just to inform
Just
the
name
governing
and
body,
address for the record, please, Ron.
I'm on the flood thing.
Name and address for the record.
Mike Studo, 42 Boat Drive, and you put me on the flood thing. I know, that's who I am.
Think about it every day.
Okay, I don't want to step on Jack's toes. Jack was unable to attend the meeting. It was arranged for us by Ross Kushner, Quantic River Coalition. Arranged a meeting with us for the city of Newark. We went up there and we spoke to the director. Okay, and he said, here's the deal. The Charlottesburg Reservoir Dam, we have floodgates there that have been inoperable for the last 9 years. If they were operable, it would retain an extra 500 million gallons of water, 500 million gallons of water in the event of a storm event. The gates could be raised to retain that much water. Ross Kushner has all the numbers of what this would do. It's substantial, believe me. The thing is now, the gates are inoperable. They have been for 9 years. To repair them would be $500,000 to $1 million. The city of Newark will not do this because the DEP will not allow them to use these floodgates to increase the capacity of the reservoir. They will only allow these floodgates to be used for flood mitigation. Consequently, the city of Newark doesn't have a dog in this race. They're not going to spend the money. So some correspondence, we got some emails into the hands of Scott Romano, who happens to be on the state flood committee, and we're supposed to be coming out with another $12.5 million in money for flooding in the Passaic River Basin. And we just want to ask everybody to please contact, send letters, emails, whatever, get us some consideration, see if we can't get $1 million put towards this Charlottesburg Reservoir project.
We're going to do a resolution on that as well. Okay. No, great.
I'll bring that stuff
Thank you.
up at our meeting on Tuesday. We have a meeting, just so everybody knows, we have a meeting Tuesday night here, 7 o'clock, flood meeting, so I'll bring that stuff up.
Well, too many of the council can't be there because we have a quorum, but I appreciate the emails and being informed of all this.
Absolutely. If you want me, I'll send it to you. It doesn't, you know what I mean? I can send it to everybody. It doesn't. Right? Just let me know. Thank you. I just thought the order was the lights and then
Well,
our stuff.
you know, in hindsight, I should have reordered it.
Thanks.
It was not intentional.
Thank you.
I didn't write the list.
Thanks.
You would have thought I did. Anyone else?
Judge, just got one question. Hey, Ronnie,
Yes.
are the other towns around us, Palm Place, McQuonic, Riverdale, all aware of what you just told us?
I believe we reached out to them, yes.
Because it would help if they're on board, they start passing resolutions, and we can start snowballing it.
Well, we can do our resolution to give it to them.
I want
Send it to them?
to, I want to say no, John,
Okay.
but I might be wrong. I don't know,
We'll copy everyone in the flood.
we passed the information on to our legislative people. They're looking for action there.
We'll send a resolution
That's
to
the Cardinal
Cardinal
too,
Schroeder. and
now that he's new.
Passes. Anyone else wishing to speak? Is that Meredith?
Yeah, sorry, that got me thinking. Meredith Mastello, 40 Maryland Avenue. I guess it's more for Mr. Amber. Can we get the county to handle the road patches a little differently, maybe? Because the bottom of Jeffrey just There's,
No, it's a mess. Let me just.
on Union Avenue, it's a mess, and then they come and patch it and it makes it
Well, they
worse.
patch all winter when you get a freeze, it doesn't stick. But
I understand, it's just, all the patching almost makes it worse
I
sometimes.
know, they kick
It-
out,
like,
it's a mess. Ted, we haven't cleaned that up a little better, but the good news is we got an email, they put out their 2012 road paving. Glenwell's being paved, Union from Maine to Van Dam, and,
So that would include that.
yeah,
But
that's gonna be
can,
paved.
I mean, are there
It's
drainage
not
issues?
Van Dam because of Avalon Bay. We don't want-
Right, but are there drainage issues that maybe need to be looked at there in terms of slopage or whatever, so that we don't have that going forward? I
You
mean,
can look at it. I mean, Jeffrey
just
Drive
to,
needs
just to
be
point
paved.
that out, I mean, it's,
Jeffrey
trying
Drive-
it to work every morning and it's.
No, it's all right. Jeffrey Drive is worse than River Bend.
So, thank you.
The good news is it will be paved entirely, but we'll try to patch it in the meantime. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Seeing no one, motion to close?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we will be going into executive session at 10:48. We have 2 matters of negotiation, 1 matter of litigation. Action may be taken when we come out. Open session. So my phone died at the time? Well,
Will you please listen, Mike, stop talking, let's
Okay.
listen to what John has to say.
I apologize, Joe.
Oh, my God.
I need, all by resolution? Okay, I need a resolution 2012 3.6 to authorize the submission of an application for the COPS grant program.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Councilmembers Toots.
Yes.
Schiffman.
Yes.
Shortman. Yes. Yasti.
Yes.
Conklin.
Yes.
Sanada.
Yes. Then we need a motion to state that due to financial conditions of the borough has opted to run the animal shelter in-house, again, due to the financial situation of the borough. You guys should not, okay, good, 'cause it's successful. And I need a motion for that.
Motion.
So moved.
Second, okay, and further discussion? Roll call.
Councilmember Schiffman.
Yes.
Shortman. Yes. Yasti.
Yes.
Conklin.
Yes.
Sanada.
Yes.
Toots.
Yes.
And then I need a motion to retain Donna Molyneux as an interim CFO, required by state law, $50 per hour for 90 days, or less if another, possibility comes up, but we need a CFO to get us through the budget process. So I need a motion to authorize Donna Molyneux as interim.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Mayor, you said $50 an hour.
$50 an hour. That's based
Is that
on,
how she's working it for us?
well, that's just going to put a cap. That's an hourly rate based on 90,000 income, so, yeah. That,
That's the way it works?
Well, I think under the circumstances, we need to put something in.
Right. So we're going to
Have
do.
that conversation.
So we're going to do. Any further discussion? Again, just for the record, required by law, and hopefully this needs to move. Roll call.
Councilmember Shortman.
No.
Yasti.
Yes.
Conklin.
Yes.
Sanada.
Yes.
Toots.
No.
Schiffman.
Yes.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes. Aye.